Happy Tuesday! Welcome to the Sean O'Connell Show on ESPN 792 on FM, on the YouTube channel, on the ESPN 700 Sports app. We're all over the place getting you ready for a Thanksgiving week, which will see a short week of broadcasts here on ESPN 700. Tomorrow, I'm traveling today to go call fights on Black Friday in Saudi Arabia. Yay, Thanksgiving in Saudi. I've got that going on today. Zachariah is going to fill in for me tomorrow. And then on Thursday, of course, you've got Thanksgiving. No shows on Thanksgiving. Black Friday, you've got a Utah football game with pregame coverage and all that stuff, and a full slate of sports besides. So this is my last live show of the week. Zach is in the producer's room, pushing the buttons, turning the ones and twos. Gordy Chiesa is going to stop by here in about half an hour. And we're going to talk about some football, some basketball. We got a Bernard breakdown today. We got Jeff Schwartz stopping by at the end of the show, the final hour of the show, I should say, to discuss some NFL football, some college football. I finally heard a story on the Manning cast that makes me feel better about my my own lack of interest from my head coaches when I was at the University of Utah. Mike Vrabel, 20 years after the fact, making me feel better about my own college career. Who knew all this would come together on a Tuesday? But here we are. So we've been talking about the future of Utah football a lot. We've been talking about the future of Utah football too much, actually, for a team that is still technically in a season. Last year, the year before, certainly the year before that, going back to the I don't count 2020, going back to the 2019 season, 2018 season, you were holding your breath and crossing your fingers and gritting your teeth and sweating it out up until the last whistle of the final game of the season, because it all mattered for what bowl game you were going to go to, if you were going to have a chance at a Pac-12 championship, all of these things. And this year, you've got one last ride for this class of seniors to play together. You've got some rising young talents that in these last couple of weeks we've seen a little bit more of. You've got Luke Batari once again starting the final game of the season, which is kind of a fun story if he can find a way to win. If Luke Batari wins this game, he is not quite Bryson Barnes, pig farmer legend status at Utah, but if he goes down as 2-0 in the record books as a starter at the University of Utah, the Ferrari is a name we're never going to forget, okay? Not for the right reasons necessarily, because the season is so bad and you wouldn't want to see him starting in an ideal scenario, but he's been impressive. He's done a great job with the time he's had. And he gets to start. UCF is going to put up yards, and they're going to put up points. And this defense, this somewhat depleted Utah defense, is going to have to find ways to slow down the number one rushing attack in the Big 12 Conference, one of the top rushing attacks in the entire country. Gus Malzahn's a good coach, so it's a tall task for Utah to stop this 7-game slide that they are on right now. But we are already turning the page. It's an uncomfortable thing. Follow this team very many. Just be like, yep, we're on to the offseason. No, you're not supposed to do that. You're supposed to focus week by week by week. But even the coaches have to start making some big picture decisions. And even the coaches can't just do this thing where they give you that coach speak answer and say, well, we'll cross that bridge when we get to it. Right now, my focus is on UCF. Well, what about this that's going to happen after the season? Nope, not going to talk about that right now. My focus is on UCF. The stakes are so low in this game that now you're moving on to bigger and better things, or what you hope can be bigger and better things. And unequivocally, the most important thing that's going to happen at Utah football is coaching decisions. And there's two big ones coming. I believe, in the next 4 days. Kyle Whittingham has to make a decision on his future, as we already discussed. We spent a lot of time discussing yesterday. and they need to decide what generation of offense they want to be running. What iteration of college football's kind of wave of offensive explosion they want to be a part of. Do you want to still be somewhat of a traditionalist? Do you want to go full air raid? That's never going to happen. Even with Morgan Scalley as a head coach, I don't think he's going to do that. Are you going to be a pro-style system moving forward? Are you going to be more like a Gidget and Gadget type offense that doesn't necessarily offer the same in terms of recruiting NFL talents, because you're not necessarily leaning on NFL talent if you're not running a pro-style system? So they have to make all these decisions at Utah football, and they got to make them soon. My question for you today, and I'll retweet it so that it's fresh on your feed, but what decision needs to happen first? Where's more urgency for you? Kyle Whittingham's return or the offensive coordinator hire? Because whether or not Kyle Whittingham comes back, you got to hire an offensive coordinator. All respect to Mike Bajakian, he's not the long-term answer. All right? He's not going to be the long-term answer. Could he still be a valuable member of this staff for mentorship, for recruitment, all that stuff? To be determined. That's above my pay grade. That's not something that I'm here to discuss. But you're going to have to hire an offensive coordinator. We've already been told that Morgan is heavily involved in that. We know Morgan Scalley's the next head coach here. We don't know if that's next year, the year after, or if that's 4 days from now.
Yeah.
So what's the more urgent decision? I guess when you lean on it, it's the offensive coordinator hire, because if Kyle Whittingham is going to be part of this program moving forward, if he's going to be the head coach of this program moving forward, he still has to make that same decision I talked about before. Am I going to get away from my traditionalist ball control mentality, and am I going to try to embrace a more progressive form of offense in college football? And we do make a mistake as football fans of assuming that the new stuff is the good stuff.
Yeah,
That it's better to do it, go with the hot hand, go with the fresh thing, go with because we all got spoiled on it when Urban Meyer came in and was running a spread when nobody else knew how to defend a spread, and Chip Kelly was doing all these crazy things. Well, everyone's kind of figured out how to stop that, or at least that iteration of it. That's now 20 years old. So what's next? You're not reinventing a wheel, and what's new is not always what's good. What's old school is not always what's bad, but it's not always what's good either. And you could be changing your recruiting philosophy if you're making too drastic of an offensive change, which just makes me think, I don't know, man. I don't know if we can bank on the likelihood that the old dog wants to learn new tricks and wants to participate in some kind of a rebuild as he's in the final few years of his career, if not the final few days of his career as a head coach.
It's going to suck to see Whittingham retire, because I grew up watching him all my life.
I'm not comfortable even talking about this, but it's what has to be talked about. Kyle Whittingham moving on. We had Mike Yam on the show yesterday, and Yam expressed a sentiment that I think is shared by a lot of people. They're it's going to suck to see him go. He said heartbroken is what Mike Yam said. I'll be heartbroken if it's not Kyle Whittingham. Because you look at Kyle Whittingham, and it's not like that guy's going to be healthy as a horse till he's 90 years old. He works out every single day. There's a lot of guys who get into this age category, and they're too tired. They're too unhealthy. They're too bored of the job. That's not Coach Whitt. He's not there. So if he walks away, he's going to walk away thinking it's what's in the best interest of the program, and maybe it is, but it's not going to be an easy thing to digest, I think, for anyone. And it is going to come with some growing pains. And one of those growing pains is going to be associated with this offensive coordinator hire. Now, you hope that in a collaborative effort, Kyle Whittingham and Morgan Scalley hire the right individual. We have seen plenty of examples of when Kyle Whittingham didn't hire the right individual, or hired a right individual maybe and didn't give him enough time. That could have been the case with Aaron Roderick in one of two stints. That could have been the case with Brian Johnson. I don't think that was the case with Dave Christensen. But Norm Chow, maybe. But you get my point. There were a bunch of situations where Dave Schramm has been a good coach since he left the University of Utah. If Dave Schramm had been given a longer leash, would he have kind of figured things out? Because the head coaches, they get the time. They get the time to figure it out. 2-3 years. At Utah, longer than 2 or 3 years, right? They get the time to figure it out. The coordinators, not often. Not as much.
It's a big adjustment for sure.
So, what's more urgent? Kyle Whittingham making a decision on his return or hiring an offensive coordinator? I reject the notion that this is not an appealing job for offensive coordinators. If you're looking at the right guys, and I gave you a list a couple of weeks ago, the guys I think are the right ones, folks who are right now at group of 5 schools. Brennan Marion at UNLV would be my top choice probably. You don't have to just go group of 5. There's great coaches at FCS schools. There's great coaches at D2 schools. There's great coaches at NAIA schools. All right? Where did Kalen DeBoer come from? South Dakota Western Tech. He's a great coach. It's not his best year as he's making this adjustment at Alabama, but I promise you when it all comes out in the wash, we're going to look back at the same Kalen DeBoer who turned Fresno into a power temporarily and then took Washington all the way to a national championship opportunity and then got the Alabama job. We're going to look back at him and just be like, wow, how did this guy come from where he started to being an eventual probably college football playoff stalwart at a place like Alabama?
Right.
You can go as far down the funnel as you want to go, and you can find really good coaches. I would not be opposed to the notion of bringing in a high school coach. I know that nobody likes that idea. I know there may be some of you like that idea. A lot of people would be like, what are you doing, man? Yes, it's better to have someone who's more of a proven commodity calling plays at the college level, but Eric Kerr down at Corner Canyon should have his name in this conversation.
I was literally about to say that too. Get a high school coach like Eric Ajar.
And it's pronounced Kerr.
Sorry, Kerr.
And Eric Kerr is, by the way, familiar with the college football world. He was a college football player. He dabbled in that graduate assistant kind of a situation. So I don't know if he wants to move on. I don't know if he likes the idea of not being the head man. But you know what? I would want to have a conversation with him. I would want to have a conversation with anybody whose offense is consistently putting up 40 points a game, wherever you are at. That's a paralysis by analysis type search, though. So you're probably going to narrow it down some. How are you going to narrow it down? Someone with Utah connections? Someone who understands the recruiting environment here? Someone who understands the recruiting and financial environment of name, image, and likeness here? Now it gets a little bit narrower. Now it gets a little bit more limited. Is it a guy that was here before? People have floated the name Brian Johnson to me. Brian Johnson would be foolish to leave NFL circles to come back to college, in my opinion. Everyone in college right now, that the game is becoming a pro system anyway, everyone in college is hoping to attach themselves to an NFL life raft at some point. If you're already there, if you're already doing it, don't come back unless you're ready to retire, unless you're 50 or 60 years old and you've kind of run your cycle in the NFL. But then again, is youth necessary? Especially if eventually, maybe sooner, maybe later, your head coach, Morgan Scalley, is going to be a guy in his early 40s, a guy who's incredibly energetic. Some of this staff is probably going to adjust and skew a little bit younger when that happens. Do you need to go with someone who speaks the language of these? What are we in? What generation are we in now, Zach? Generation Z?
I think so, Z.
Are we in Generation Z? What are we going to go to after Z?
I don't know. That's confusing.
Why did whoever started naming these generations after the baby boomers, why did you start with Generation X?
I don't know.
Then you only have Y and Z after that. That was a dumb move. We're going to have to go back to like the Greek alphabet or something. I don't like that.
I think there's a Gen A too. I'm pretty sure.
A Gen A?
Something.
I've never seen a Gen A. We're going to have to look that up.
Yeah,
but
I'm going to look it up.
Here's the thing. You're in a serious inflection point for Utah football that started to really form about 2 losses into this 7-loss streak, where belief started to erode a little bit, where people started to question the culture. I was one who was questioning whether or not the culture remained intact. I asked that question to coaches. I asked that question to players. I asked that question to writers, to reporters, and it got mixed reviews. The players said it's still intact. The coaches said it's still intact. They have to say that, one. But also, when you watch the way that these guys conduct themselves, and I'm not talking about in front of cameras and microphones. I'm talking about if you stand on the sideline at a game and you pay attention to the subtleties, the culture is not firmly cemented the way that it was, in the Sugar Bowl season, isn't firmly cemented the way that it was in the first couple of shots at a Pac-12 championship that ended up in losses. It wasn't necessarily as cemented as obviously those peak years that I always lean on and say 21 and 22 are like those are the salad days for Utah football. It's not quite there. It's not quite so firmly rooted, but it's also not absent. And it's foolish to think that it is. It's clear that there's an adjustment period happening right now by coaches, by players in this new NIL era, but the culture is far from gone. It hasn't eroded completely. Has it been shaken by this losing streak? Yes. Did that start early on? Yes. Is it gone? No. So this inflection point, these next 4 to 8 to how far are we from the transfer portal opening? We are
like 2 weeks, I think.
Yeah, we're like 16 days.
Something like that.
15 days, 13 days, whatever it is. I'll count it up on a calendar and give you a real answer.
Also, I have a real answer for you. No one's credited with the slang Gen Z, but Gen A is after Gen Z.
We're going back to A.
Uh-huh.
Huh. I don't like it.
I don't like it either. It's so confusing to me.
All right. Focusing on the football side of things, though, you're at this inflection point where a coaching decision has to be made regardless of Kyle Whittingham's decision. An offensive coordinator has to be hired that is going to ideally do 3 things in equal measure. Maximize the talent you've already got on the roster. Maintain the talent you've got on the roster that is considering transferring away, and attracting talent in the transfer portal and in high school recruiting that is going to make you successful in the short term and the long term, because you need a quick turnaround offensively in order to keep the defensive guys in the room. Like the Smith Snowdens of the world, the Cam Calhouns, the Keanu Tonuvasas, the Jonnu Halls. I think that those guys will probably stick around for next year. And then if the new offensive coordinator can't resurrect anything and can't do anything to help you win football games, if this offense is embarrassing and paltry and does nothing 2 years in a row, then you start to erode the defensive base, and that is when the Utah football culture collapses, all right? When your defensive players are not doing their job consistently, are not displaying the identity of the coaching staff, they're not displaying the toughness that everyone recognizes primarily on the defensive side of the ball for Utah, and then in its best years it's carried over to the offensive side of the ball. So this candidate you are hiring has to exist in this Goldilocks zone, has to be this unicorn of a human being that is willing to come to Utah, first of all, embrace the limitations, the issues of expectations being at a conference championship college football playoff level, but budgets being slightly below that. Not significantly below that, but slightly below that relative to competition, even in your own conference. You've got to have someone that is willing to work with a defensive-minded head coach. Again, whether it's Morgan Scalley or it's Kyle Whittingham, your head coach at the University of Utah is a defense-first head coach. And it's going to be an adjustment, even if Morgan takes over. It's going to be an adjustment for him to say, no. Best athletes, most money, NIL opportunities, all that. pour it into the offense first, because that's the direction of college football right now. If it's Kyle Whittingham who's overseeing this, that becomes even more difficult, because now you're battling the perception that this guy has limited offensive coordinators' opportunities in the past. I reject that notion somewhat, but only to the extent that, Andy Ludwig disproved it.
I have a question for you. What kind of offense do you want to see Utah run with this new OC?
Look, hybrid spread concepts with still an ability to run. Like I said, a unicorn offense where you have to be able to pin your ears back, run the ball down people's throats when it's necessary, but you also have to appeal to the athletes that are going to make you nationally relevant, television-worthy, highlight show type football, because that's what's attracting recruits right now. You want the offense that is being run at Ohio State, and you have to find a way to get the athletes to run it.
Yeah.
Like, they've got NFL guys at every position at Ohio State. Utah has how many NFL guys on the offense this year? You've got 2 offensive linemen at least that are going to get their opportunity in the NFL. I think one of them is probably a multi-year, actual, bona fide starter in the NFL, to be determined. You got at least one of those, maybe 2, on the offensive line. At the running back position, Mekhi Bernard, I think, will make a roster. I don't think he'll be drafted. I think he'll make a roster because he's willing and able to play special teams. Mm-hmm. He's got the versatility there, but as much as we love Mekhi Bernard, who's going to join us later on the show, I don't think Mekhi Bernard is like a day one running back in any NFL system. I just don't believe that. There's no quarterback on the roster right now who's a sure thing in the NFL. That's obviously the most important one. Dorian Singer, does he make an NFL roster? He's pretty undersized. Is he talented enough? Absolutely, but he's got to find the right fit. And then the tight end situation, you would have said Brant Keith, he's going to find his way in the NFL, even though he's a tweener size-wise, but now you've got the injury situation. Now, Carson Ryan is more of the prototypical build for an NFL tight end, and Dallin Bentley is more the prototypical build for an NFL tight end. But we haven't seen enough production from either of those guys, and I think that's part of the fault of this coaching staff. You know what's the wildest thing?
What's that?
Probably the guy I'm most confident from this year's roster who's on the offensive side of the ball who's going to make an NFL team next year is Caleb Lohner, who's been playing football for 1 season.
He's a big dude. Big dude.
He's got all the measurables, and wildly, every catch he's made this year has resulted in points.
Yeah, look at that touchdown from Colorado last week. 2 weeks ago now.
Every catch results in points. He had 4 catches, 4 touchdowns, and then he caught an extra point, a 2-point conversion. So he doesn't have any catches that didn't result in points for the team. I'm probably most confident on the offensive roster for Utah football this year that Caleb Lohner ends up on a squad in the NFL. That's nuts, because he's the guy who's the least proven as a football player. And it would have been somebody like Brant Keithy if Brant Keithy was able to stay healthy.
Right. Well, it's like, look at Dalton Kincaid from 2 years ago when Keithy got hurt.
Well, not even close to the same kind of a player, really, actually. Dalton Kincaid is a traditional, he's not hand-in-the-ground type tight end, but he is built more like an NFL tight end than Brant Keithy. Brant Keithy in the NFL is going to be what Chris Cooley was in the NFL. He's going to be more like Taysom Hill in the NFL than he's going to be like Dalton Kincaid in the NFL.
Right.
Because that's his skill set. And again, now he's got to rehab another serious injury and another serious surgery in order to make that happen for himself. 877-353-0700. Tell me what kind of offense, answer Zach's question, what kind of offense you want to see this Utah team run. It's easy for me to say, run some. I don't want to see them run Colorado's offense. I don't want that. I don't want it to be you rely solely on quarterback and wide receiver play, because there's no history of Utah excelling enough in those positions to rely on that. So I want it to be a balanced offense. I realize it's like, hey, what kind of a significant other do you want to find? Well, I want someone who's physically attractive, financially successful, intelligent, both academically and emotionally, completely stable and wonderful, caring, affectionate, and also has an incredibly high sex drive. Oh, so you want a unicorn? You want someone that is incredibly impossible to find? Yes, that's what I want. So what kind of offense do I want to see Utah football run? One that attracts talent. And you had it. You can have it again relatively easily. I don't think you just have to say, well, we had a pro-style offense, and the pro-style offense was too complicated, and it didn't work, because that's not true. 3 of the 4 best years of Utah football's existence, you were running a hybrid-ish pro-style offense. So you can't say it didn't work. It just didn't work in these last 2 years. So the knee-jerk reaction is, well, do something opposite of that. No. Give me somebody with a resume that says, it doesn't matter if I run the wing tee. It doesn't matter if I run the option. It doesn't matter if I run a spread or an air raid. What I'm showing you here is that I will give you 400 yards and 40 points a game. Out of the power I? Yep, out of the power I. That's what we're running. Here it is. That's what you need. You need an offense that's going to give yards and points. It's going to attract talent. In most cases now in college football, that is a 60% pass, 40% run type offense.
Right.
So I guess that's the long answer of what I want.
Yeah.
877-353-0700. Weigh in on the Dish Pros text line at Real OC Sports. As always, we got to take a break here so we can talk a little hoop with my guy Gordy Chiesa. Before we do that, I want to remind you that today and every day, the opening segment of the Sean O'Connell Show is brought to you by Alvi Armani and alviarmani.com. If you're wearing the hats more often than you'd like, if you're worried about the hairline retreating, if you got the bald spot appearing on the crown of your head and you're embarrassed about it, stop the embarrassment, stop being self-conscious. Just go to alviarmani.com and they will take care of your hair loss problems. Tell them that OC sent you. Gordy Chiesa next on ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN Radio Network.
Well, for the Jazz right now, you've got to try to. And let's not forget, last game they played a tremendous effort against Knickerbockers, where they took it right to them. So with Wembanyama type people, what you want to do is move them around and try to get them outside in space and a dribble drive to the basket. Now, he can recover some, but what you want to do is get him outside. Also, when you're playing as a shot blocker, we call that random screen. When you're really a good team execution-wise, when you see Wembanyama and you go right past him offensively, set a screen on him. So get him upright all the time. And the more you screen a shot blocker, the less he's ready to react to get into play. So, again, that's what you want to do. You want to move the shot blockers around. From the Jazz point of view, offensively, is keep moving the ball. Because last game they did it beautifully, and Larry Markkinen was absolutely sensational. So was Colin Sexton, and so was John Collins. Let's not forget also, Sean, a guy named Chris Paul. He's right now the steward of the ship as far as leading them, and he's played well. He turns 40 on May 6th of 2025, and he's still going strong in his 20th season.
Chris Paul, for me, Gordy, is one of those guys who, if he's on your team, you love him. If he's on any other team, you hate him. Like, if you made an all-NBA team of individuals who were like that, Chris Paul would have to be the point guard. Draymond Green would have to be on the team. There are just some guys in every sport where, because of how they interact with referees, because of how they get under the skin of your players, no matter what uniform Chris Paul is in, can't stand him. But I'm sure I would love it if he was in a Utah Jazz uniform.
Yeah, very much. Also, add to that. Oh, by the way, he's pass happy. He's averaging going to be age 40. He's averaging 8.5 assists, and he's shooting 38.6 from three. So you describe players that are really ultra aggressive. They love to talk trash, and they love to try to attempt to get in your head. So in yesteryear, that would be Dennis Rodman and then Gary Payton. Those two guys would remind me of some of the players, and also Rasheed Wallace. So they always tried to talk to referees that they never committed a foul, and it's all part of they call it gamemanship.
There's a lot of energy that goes into it for those types of guys that you're talking about. Now, I don't think I would have the mental bandwidth to be constantly jawing at everybody around me and also trying to execute. But there are some personalities that I think are kind of driven by that. That's the way they need to play the game, or else they're not fully themselves. Would those guys fall into that category?
Yeah, very much. That's what happens, is that those guys need the extra focus as far as being the temporary town villain. So where the whole arena is somewhat against you, especially if it's a road game. If it's a home contest, then the fans love you and adore you because they're fighting. That player is fighting for the fans as far as winning the game. So it's interesting. Now, what you want to do is to be both. You want to be ultra aggressive, but not cross that imaginary line often where it affects your team. Now, let's not forget, a lot of times you get technical fouls or weirdness during a game, it affects your teammates, and that's what you don't want to do. So, for example, when Metapiece, when he did that with the Lakers all those times in Indiana Pacers, is that it affected his team where he crossed that line often, and usually your teammates don't play as well.
So how do you coach that up? I don't know if you need to have one guy, if there's a role that has to be filled on an NBA roster where you have the guy that's kind of the pot stirrer or the individual that does get under the skin of the opposition. But how do you coach those guys up if you have them? Because you obviously don't want to cross that threshold to where it's a detriment to the team. Too many technical fouls, too many issues.
Yeah, very much. So the way you want to do is that you want to counsel the player that we respect who you are, and it helps you to get yourself going. But you've got to understand the big picture, how it sometimes is a detriment to your teammates that see it as a distraction. And so we would keep talking to that player. As great as Karl Malone was, Karl sometimes was a town villain on road games. And so people would get on him all the time. And by the way, he responded, though. And so Karl had interesting mental capacity where he would often go right to the line of getting technical fouls and then walk away and back away, or be physical and get in someone's face, almost nearly have a confrontation and then walk away, knowing that his team needs him too much to perform to get any personal one-on-one conflicts.
Gordy Chase is my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking some NBA hoop. You pointed out a quirk of the schedule a couple of weeks ago that this is the last time you face the Spurs, right? All the games against the Spurs are before Thanksgiving this year.
That is correct, yeah. Just the way the schedule was. Also, in Utah Jazz point of view, now with the hockey team here, there's probably less availability of dates. And so if you're a Jazz fan tonight, this is the last time you'll see the young brilliance of Victor Wembanyama. So the Jazz right now are down 2-1 in the series. And, you know, Sean, ironically, tonight is a cup game. So tonight is a game for the NBA Cup, and there's some pride in that. And so I know the Jazz cannot advance in the Cup unless the other teams fall apart. And in the Jazz, the division right now, as far as in the Cup, is the Suns, the Spurs, the Lakers, and the Thunder. And right now the Jazz are 0-2. So there's the element of pride. Quickly, I'm asking this question often. Who cares about the NBA Cup? The answer is the fans do and the players do. It's not as important, obviously, as the NBA finals, etc. But in season, what it was put into place was to create interest. We've never seen so much fan interest and player intensity in November and December ever in the NBA, starting last year. The teams and the patrons are engaged. If you're the winning team player, your share is going to be $514,970. The losing team player share is going to be $205,988. So now those players don't really need that money. So often, what those players do, they give it to charity, which is commendable. Here's the last point about the economics of it. If you're a two-way player, so you make $580 this year, as far as $580,000. Two-way players, they receive half of the either winning or losing share. And so those guys' point of view is that they hope their teammates can win the game and give them an extra $100,000 or an extra $250,000 as far as helping them. So it does matter. And the last point about it, it's pride. Last year the Lakers won the tournament, and the first time ever MVP was LeBron James. They had the many, many accolades that he has.
The cash element to this has been interesting for me because, like you said, there are guys, when you're making $40 million a year, an extra $500,000 barely registers for you. Yes, it can provide, a little bump. You can buy a car with that. You can do the charitable donation kind of thing. The further you get down the roster, obviously, the more significant it is. And if you're one of the star players knowing that, right, I imagine, you tell me, that this kind of involves the whole locker room a little bit more. If you're LeBron James, you want to win that extra $250,000 or that extra $500,000 for the guy who's only making $3 million this year, who's only making the two-way contract this year. Does it bring a locker room together more somehow when you're talking about a financial prize that goes equally across the board?
Oh, very much. And that's you mentioned LeBron. That was his rallying cry last year. So here's LeBron. You can make an argument, the greatest player of all time or the second greatest. You can debate that forever. And LeBron saying to his teammates, let's help our two-way players get some more money. And so LeBron, Anthony Davis, those guys really came ready to play. And they beat the Pacers last year. And let's not forget, the Pacers, so it's this middle of this early season intensity. And didn't the Pacers overachieve in the playoffs? So the Pacers' point of view, what they said was that by playing in a tournament at a high level, that it helped them later on in April and May to advance to what? The conference finals, where they lost to the Celtics. And so it does matter. Players have pride in themselves. They make so much money, it's hard to imagine sometimes. But the core essence of these guys, they're highly competitive. And there's a goal here of trying to advance in this mini tournament. And the NBA took that, Sean, from the soccer format in Europe, and it's been successful.
Going back to the Jazz Spurs scheduling quirk, I use this Spurs team as, they're a bit of a litmus test for how far the Jazz are along in their development. You don't want to compare what the Jazz are right now to the top teams in the West. You don't want to compare what the Jazz are now against teams with a bunch of established veterans who are contending for an NBA championship this year. I want to know where they are relative to teams like the Spurs, who are also in a rebuild of sorts. And now you don't get this litmus test, further into the season. It's all done before Christmas. It's all done before Thanksgiving. So who are the remaining teams on the schedule that the Jazz will face deeper into the season that I should be using as like, all right, well, how do they compare with the other young teams, the other teams that are kind of on their level in terms of rebuilds?
Yeah, in the West it would be the Trailblazers. That right now they're 7-11, and they have some good young guys on their team. So in the West it would be the Trailblazers. In the East it would be the Raptors and the Hornets. Those two teams are starting over, and the Wizards, they've always been starting over, so they've struggled. And then Detroit Pistons, to their credit, with a new coach, that they were 8-11, so it would have been the Pistons, but now suddenly they're fast-tracking it, and the Nets refuse to lose. So everyone thought, Sean, that the Nets are going to go into deep, really losing mode to try to get the pick high in the draft, 1, 2, or 3, but the Nets players aren't cooperating. They're 8-10 right now. Now, I know that could change. I get it. So in the West, it's going to be the Trailblazers as far as looking at them, the Raptors, Hornets, the Nets, and the Pistons in the East. And so they're the youngest teams, basically, and those are the units you want to see your young guys against that. In Jazz basketball, here's the reality, though, is that Walker Kessler has got to outplay some of the time Victor Wembanyama. So you play against, and also the OKC Thunder. Now, we know the Thunder are much more advanced. They're a younger, slightly team. The Thunder is also. So Kessler's got to outfight Chet Holmgren. I know he's hurt right now. So in Jazz basketball, that they're big guys, whether they play solely inside or sometimes outside. They got to minimum, Sean, battle, fight hard to try to win some of those games as far as individual matchup. So it's very challenging in Jazz basketball, because the other teams have these two young big guys that are ultra talented. The Jazz have a good young shot blocker. He's got to improve.
Gordy Chiesa for another minute or two here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking NBA basketball. Are the Philadelphia 76ers on their way to a divorce with Joel Embiid?
Yes.
Wow.
Even though you love his talent, and when he's healthy, he can get 50 points in a playoff game. But, Sean, there's something missing. And so you don't want to give him away. Now, the problem is going to be his contract, where it's good for him, but it's bad for the team that's might try to acquire him. But it's not working as far as him with the team and the team towards him, even though he's ultra-talented. And I know that he's been hurt with his knee, and it's been the last 2 years as far as either the surgery or the soreness in his knee, and that set them back. Now, Paul George is hurt right now. Therese Maxey's an unbelievably young talent. So here's Joel Embiid's contract, Sean. This year he makes $51.4 million. 25-26 he makes $55.2 million. The 26-27 season, it's a player option. He makes $59 million. So they've got to try to find a trading partner that we're able to absorb that contract and give back some of the money as far as either draft picks or players to help the 76ers. The 76ers thought they would never be this bad. They thought they're going to be contend with the Celtics and the Cavs and the Knickerbockers and the Bucks for the championship. Right now, Sean, they're 3-13. Yikes.
What's the market around the rest of the NBA going to be for Joel Embiid's services, knowing the injury history, knowing that, there's something missing, like you said? Who's going to want to take on money like that for a flawed player?
We're going to find out, Sean. I know it sounds there'll be one team or one ownership group that says that we're willing to risk it and that they'll make a trade. So who will it be? We'll find out.
Will the Jazz be anywhere near that conversation?
No, and I hope not. The answer is no. No, you don't want to have a guy that's a history of being injured, especially a big guy with knee problems, which means also, Sean, he can't practice. And you've been an athlete in a team sport. The worst you could do ever is, besides being injured, you can't practice. and the rest of your team is out there in that hot sun or on the basketball court, and they're giving it their all, and maybe they're not feeling well themselves, but they're practicing, and then this guy on the sideline, even though he's hurt, he's not practicing, and eventually what? It drives a wedge between the player and his teammates. And so that's a huge factor. Remember now, the 76ers have not won a second-round playoff game in 7 years. So with Embiid being there or being injured during that time, they've never gotten past the second round in 7 years. So it's somewhat mixed results.
What's your list for me today, Gordy?
My list today shows the San Antonio Spurs. Your point's right on about we're not going to see these guys till next year. So this is a quick list about the top 10 greatest San Antonio Spurs franchise players. Just quickly, the background. The Spurs started in 1967 as a charter member of the ABA. In 1976, 4 ABA franchises entered the NBA. They were the Spurs, the New York Nets, which is now the Brooklyn Nets, Indiana Pacers, and the Denver Nuggets. The Spurs are a proud franchise, very similar to the Jazz. However, they won 5 championships, 1999, 2003, 2005, 2007, and 2014. They're led by their Hall of Fame coach, Greg Popovich, who's in his 29th season with the Spurs. Here we go. Here's the top 10 greatest San Antonio Spurs players. Number 10, Bruce Bowen. His jersey retired both NBA titles, 5 times first-team all-defense. He was the master of the corner 3. Number 9, Sean Elliott. Number 32, jersey retired. He was a glue teammate, 2-time All-Star, championship title in 1999. Number 8, nickname was the A-Train, Artis Gilmore, in the Hall of Fame, All-Star performer, scorer, rebounder, and shot blocker. All right, here we go, Sean. Number 7, and this guy will move up in the list every single year. I'm saying, and maybe you're saying, Sean, that Victor Wembanyama in his second year is the 7th greatest ever Spurs player. His number 1 jersey, it seems to me, will be retired someday in the future. Remember, let's not forget now, he turns 21 on January 4th, 2025. He's a future Hall of Famer. He's a generational talent. He's a franchise difference maker. Oh, by the way, last year he was Rookie of the Year. Number 6 all-time, Kawhi Leonard with the Spurs 7 years, future Hall of Famer. He was the MVP of the 2014 championship. He was a perennial All-Star with his first team, the Spurs. Number 5, one of the all-time greats, Manu Ginobili. He was the soul of the Spurs. Argentinian, his number 20 jersey is retired. He's in the Hall of Fame, 4 championships, 6-man extraordinaire, clutch player, fearless, incredible in playoff games. Number 4, all-time greatest Spur, the Admiral, David Robinson, in the Hall of Fame. Number 50 jersey retired, 2 championships. Number 3, the Frenchman, Tony Parker, Hall of Fame, 4 championships. Number 9 jersey retired, 2001. He was the 28th pick of the draft, Sean, and I worked him out twice on the court, and he wanted to come over right away from Europe. And in Jazz, at that time, we're going to be over the salary cap, so we took Raul Lopez instead of taking Tony Parker.
Wow.
Yeah, crazy, right? Number 2 all time. Nickname was the Iceman, George Gervin, in the Hall of Fame, one of the greatest ever ABA, NBA scorers of all time. Number 44 jersey retired. He had the signature 10-foot finger roll. He penetrated with that finger roll and put it over to help defense. And the number 1 greatest player of all time in Spurs history. We all love him because he's such a tremendous player. Nickname was Mr. Fundamentals, Hall of Famer. Number 21 jersey retired, Tim Duncan, with 5 titles. Quickly, the last point is this, Sean. Not to be left out of the Hall of Fame Love Fest in 2007, the Spurs mascot, the Coyote, alias Tim Dirk, was inducted into the Mascot Hall of Fame. Thus, that's my list, Sean, of the greatest ever San Antonio Spurs. All those players I mentioned, I love all of them.
Tim Duncan, Gordy, he's crossed over into my world a little bit. He is, since retirement, he's been very involved in the MMA and jiu-jitsu community. He's like a big martial arts guy now. Did you know that?
I did. No, Sean, I did. Absolutely, yeah. And I could see that. And think about his agility. And people forget that Tim Duncan in Virgin Islands growing up, he was a swimmer. And so he has that natural gift of fluidity. And even though he's 7 foot, he was 255. He was pretty agile for his size.
Yeah, guys that are that big in combat sports are so fascinating. The reach, especially. So pretty cool stuff. He's actually come to some of our fights in the PFL. Big Tim Duncan fan. Even if he didn't cross over into that world, just an incredible basketball player, obviously. So a fun fact about number one on Gordy's list of the big time San Antonio Spurs. Gordy, I'm out for the rest of the week, so have a happy Thanksgiving. We'll be chatting again next week. Thank you.
Thanks, Sean. Happy Thanksgiving. Travel safe. Thank you.
That's Gordy Chiesa, our resident NBA insider here. All right, hour number one wrapping up next, and then, of course, we'll have the Bernard breakdown. We've got some tiebreakers to discuss in the Big 12 Championship. We'll call it Tiebreaker Tuesday. Lots coming in hour number two, and then hour number three, it'll be Jeff Schwartz. Make sure you do not go anywhere. Sean O'Connell Show continues on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM. But before I get out of here, I want to remind you, as the weather gets bad again, as the roads are going to be slick, as the driving conditions are going to become more threatening, you need something with full-time four-wheel drive. You need an SUV, probably. If you're living here in Utah, everyone drives an SUV here. You need an SUV that is built to actually conquer the trails, conquer the mountains, but is also stylish on the highways and on the suburban streets and looks great in that Smith's parking lot. Ineos Grenadier. If you have not checked this vehicle out, I don't know why you're not listening to me. I'm a little offended you haven't, but just trust me. Go out to the Warner Van Center. The Ineos Grenadier dealership is out there, 2400 South, 5600 West in West Valley. Schedule a test drive. You're going to fall in love with this car. Aesthetically, it's got that boxy, cool, sleek look. And then on the interior, they stripped away all the unnecessary bells and whistles. More importantly, the performance. This thing is a muscular SUV that can handle everything from that rock crawling down in Moab to the aforementioned grocery runs. You need to check out the Ineos Grenadier. Go to the Warner Ineos Grenadier dealership, 2400 South, 5600 West. Tell them OC sent you. Check them out online at WarnerIneosGrenadier.com. Wrapping up hour number one next on Utah's ESPN Radio Network. North Carolina, obviously a basketball school, they've had some years of good football, and they pay well. And when the dust settles, when the next round of realignment happens, I believe North Carolina is going to be on the right side of the line of demarcation because of that Tar Heels basketball program and because of the media market that is represented by being the most popular brand in the state of North Carolina. It's not in the largest city in North Carolina, but Charlotte doesn't have a university. Everyone in Charlotte loves North Carolina. So I think that's actually a pretty dang cool job because you can win 8 or 9 games a year there and keep that job for a long time and get paid really, really well. So appealing, I don't think the ripple effect touches Utah or BYU or Utah State in any way with Mac Brown being ousted. But the carousel is starting its spin, and it's taken a couple laps. It's going around. Next week, as soon as 4 days from now, 5 days from now, is when it's going to really be crazy once again, as it is every year in college football. So something to look at. All right, taking another break real fast. Mekhi Bernard joins us in 3 minutes. The Bernard Breakdown. I think it's going to be our final one of the year because there's no bowl game. So we'll take a look forward and a look back with Mekhi Bernard, Utah offensive captain and starting running back. Sean O'Connell Show continues on a Tuesday. ESPN 792.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN Radio Network.
on ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM.
Hour number 2 of the Sean O'Connell Show, and we start with the Bernard breakdown. Mekhi Bernard, offensive captain, running back at the University.
To really feel good about, I should say. But when I do look back at it, I've done a lot here. I've helped win 2 championships. That's 2 rings I've never ever had in my life, going back to youth football and basketball and whatnot. So, just to say I'm a champion, I feel good about that, and to do it with these boys, I'm proud of myself and us.
Well, you should be. It's really interesting. You say, you've never had that. This community hasn't had it either, right? Like, you were part of a thing that the University of Utah was aspiring to for probably long before you had like any sense of Utah football at all. Long before you were recruited, long before you were part of this team. Coach Witt took over the job 20 years ago, and Urban Meyer before him, and Ron McBride before him, and all these guys that played were hoping to someday be like a nationally relevant program consistently. And you were part of the team that I think is going to go down in Utah history as, at least to this point, the most nationally relevant era of Utah football. So I guess there's not even a question in here, but I hope everyone that was involved in those 2 championship years especially does get to look back and feel proud of what was accomplished.
Right.
All right. So let's focus on UCF a little bit. As you move forward, you got one last ride with these teammates. You got one last game in a Utah football uniform, and it is against a team that is not stellar defensively, but puts up a bunch of points and puts up a bunch of yards, and particularly runs the ball incredibly well. So what have you seen from them on film, and what are you expecting in Orlando at the Bounce House?
They're pretty much like a Colorado team defensively. They really try to have everyone on the D-line have a one-on-one matchup. So they don't like to have our offense create double teams and stuff like that. So that's what we're really seeing. Everybody's going to have a one-on-one matchup. We got to win our one-on-one matchups.
I feel like it's Groundhog Day because I have to ask you this question. This is like the 3rd different quarterback I've had to ask you this question about, but how do you help Isaac Wilson be more successful? How do you help Brandon Rose be more successful? And now that it's going to be Luke Batari, how do you help the Ferrari be more successful in his only start of the season?
He's got to run the ball so he can throw it. Luke Batari, he's played a lot of football, so he knows what he has to do. He's prepared. He's always been prepared. He's just been waiting for his chance to go out there and play, and I'm glad he got to do that last week on senior night. And, he's a great football player, so I don't think I need to do anything differently but, just be productive in the run game so he can throw the ball. But as you can see, Luke, he would do whatever he got to do to make sure we go out and win the game.
He can run as well. I mean, his biggest offensive play of that game was, carried out the fake and took it around the right side. That was one of the most explosive offensive plays the offense had in that game and in like the last few games. So, did you know that Luke Batari had those wheels, had that ability?
Yeah, I mean, I see him at practice all the time. He's a smooth little rudder. He just runs so smoothly. Doesn't look like he's really sliding, but, that's what a Ferrari does. Ferrari just moves so smoothly that you can't even see that it's going fast.
Mekhi Bernard is my guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show for the Bernard Breakdown on ESPN 700, brought to you by Prices Guaranteed Doors every single week. All right, so focusing still on Batari, I guess technically on the depth chart when this season began, he was like the fourth string guy, the fifth string guy. We have seen it. He's got a start under his belt. Last year's final game of the season against Colorado, he started and he won that game. He does not carry himself when he got onto the field. He didn't carry himself like somebody who was wide-eyed and the moment was too big. And I know it did translate into a victory against a very good Iowa State team, but when you're going down the list of how many quarterbacks have had to step up and take charge of this offense, how hard is that for a guy to come in his only meaningful reps of a season and to perform the way he did, which I thought he performed admirably, even though it didn't lead to the win?
Like I said, he's always prepared, and he's played a lot of football, like I said. So him coming in, it didn't really faze him. He knew he was going to have an opportunity depending on how the game went, and he could possibly get in the game because we were down to technically the last two quarterbacks. So if anything happened to Isaac, which it did, sadly, he was going to be prepared for it. So, but Luke has waited for his turn. He's always came to practice prepared. He knows what he has to do, and he's played a lot of football. So nothing was going to faze him going into the game.
Speaking of the Isaac Wilson injury, watching that tackle in the moment, I didn't think anything of it except, oh, man, looks like the young guy's hurt. And then you watch the replay, and we've watched it over and over and over again now, and the tackler does a little extra gator roll, a little extra spin. And I don't think – I'm not one to point fingers most of the time. I don't think that most college football players, most football players in general, are out there trying to do dirty things, trying to hurt the opposition. I come away from that one, though, going like, why the extra roll? Why still holding on to the leg when you make that extra roll? It felt like a dirty play to me. What was the reaction when you guys saw that on film?
I don't want to, say anything because I don't know the intentions of those guys and what they were doing. But I thought not even just that play, when the guys were trying to tackle me, they had my legs trying to twist it as well. And I had to tell them to let go because the play is over. And, so, I mean, I don't know what their intentions. I'm not going to, speak for them, but I'm speaking for myself. And I did feel as if they were trying to, twist our legs and stuff like that because I was in a position multiple times where I had to tell them to let go of my leg and stop twisting after the play. So, you can take that as you know what I'm saying? I'm not going to speak for them, but that's how I feel.
I appreciate you taking the high road on that. I know what you're trying to do. How commonplace is that to give the fans who don't really know if that's always going on at the bottom of piles or whatever? Like, how many times this season, how many teams have you had to, hey, guys, don't be doing that. Don't be trying to hurt anyone. Don't be twisted ankles down here.
And look, I'm going to be honest with you. It's been probably 3 teams that's done that, and I want to give a huge shout-out to number 7 from Colorado. He had a chance to, turn my leg, and he stopped mid-play. In mid-tackle, he says, number 2, you good? I'm not trying to hurt you. And let's go mid-tackle. And I respect that because, you want to play. You want guys to continue playing, and he did that. But other guys get in the pile, and they see opportunity to hurt you. So they do dirty stuff and twist your leg. And it's been a couple other teams that's done that this season.
Wow. I'm trying to look up number 7 for Colorado right now to give that guy the proper – that would be Cameron Silman Craig, the safety out of Birmingham, Alabama, and Trinity Christian Oh, he's a guy who played for Coach Prime at Jackson State. Okay, that makes sense. That's
Yep.
It's good to hear things like that. I'm glad you added that because I don't want this to be a totally negative conversation about people doing dirty stuff. So thanks for bringing that. Good on him for doing things the right way. Wow, that's
The right way.
That's really interesting. Mekhi Bernard for another minute or two here on the Sean O'Connell Show for the Bernard Breakdown. So, again, getting back to this UCF team, this UCF defense, look, you're going to have to put up points, and the offense has been inconsistent the last several weeks. This most recent game against Iowa State, we had you on last week, and we talked about they're not particularly great against the run. You guys, though, did not even meet your averages in the run game. Were they too dialed in? Was it you were running into unfriendly box counts? Looking back at this Iowa State game, what made the run game so difficult for you guys to get going?
I think it was just the execution part. I mean, we had good plays. Plays are won and lost by one guy, messing up or, just getting beat or something like that. And it only takes one guy. So it's kind of rare for all 11 guys to be on the field and, executing at a high level. So that's been our problem is we get a good play, but it's just one guy that, messes up, or in the next play it's another guy. We all just have to be on the same wavelength, and, we can run the ball exceptionally well, but we just haven't had that.
You play on Black Friday, day after Thanksgiving. I imagine.
Oh, really? Man.
I imagine the team will be doing some kind of Thanksgiving dinner. Are you did you grow up loving Thanksgiving? I mean, when you're a college football player, Thanksgiving is reserved for football. But has Thanksgiving been a big holiday for you in your life?
Yeah, it has. I mean, a lot of family comes over. Family cooks good food, which I miss so dearly. Haven't had in a long time. But yeah, I mean, I remember our Thanksgiving dinners and our family time we had, and really do miss it.
So what about the team, though? I mean, I know Chef Pete, when you guys are at home, he makes good food. But what about when you guys are on the road? Is this going to be an adequate Thanksgiving feast down in Orlando, you think?
I have no clue. I don't know what to expect right now. We travel pretty early in the morning, and then we have a little walkthrough or whatnot. So I don't know what to expect yet. Coach probably tell us about it today or tomorrow, and we'll see.
How's it going to feel putting on a Utes uniform for the last time in your career coming up on Friday? I
don't know. Don't know yet. We'll see. Hopefully it's not too emotional. Well, I don't know, man. I don't want to think about it right now.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't. I shouldn't put that on you right now to try and have to have these emotions over and over and over again. For the team, though, for these guys who, I saw, I think it was Jaron Kump after practice yesterday saying, look, we know we don't make a bowl game. We know this season hasn't gone the way we wanted it to. Just want to go out on a high note. Is that really the goal, to just go get this one last win?
Yeah, I mean, we just want to go out on a high note. We've been through a lot this season, a lot of close, disappointing losses. So we want to go out having fun and with a win.
What do you think is going to happen with Utah football after this thing is all said and done, after this season's all said and done? There's some big decisions that need to be made. Offensive coordinator needs to be hired. Kyle Whittingham needs to make a decision about his future. What is your sense of the direction of Utah football after a bad season, but it's kind of one bad season in a great era of Utah football?
Just trying to figure out how to turn it around, whether it's for right now, the biggest question is the OC. And so we got to figure out how to put points on the board. That's going to be the thing leading up until next season, is trying to turn this offense around. And then, with Coach Witt, his decision to his decision. And so we'll see what he does. He's a great, exceptional coach, and whatever choice he makes is going to be the right one.
What does your life look like after this season is over? Now that you don't have a bowl game, I don't know your academic situation, how many classes you're taking right now, if you got to come back and finish some things up. I assume you get back on the plane, you come back with the team, you finish out the semester. But you tell me, what does the immediate few weeks coming for Mekhi Bernard look like?
I think it's just recovery right now. After the season, just try to recover so I can get ready to go train and get my body right.
Have you already made a decision on where you're going to prepare for the combine or the pro day or all that pro scout situation?
Can you say that again?
Do you know where you're going to get ready for an NFL combine invite if that comes, or a pro day, or do you know where you're going to conduct your preparation for the pre-draft process?
No, not right now. I'm still thinking about it. I got some places in mind, but I still got to look into it and see if they offer what I'm looking for.
Are you going to be one of the guys, because there's two ways it goes, right? There's guys who graduate from school who spend time in the football program, and then we see them again maybe like 10 years later. We see them 20 years later. There's other guys that are at a game every single year, alum that just happen to make their way back to Salt Lake City for whatever reason. Some people do settle down here. What is Mekhi Bernard going to be on that scale?
Hopefully I'll be here a lot more. I think, when it's all said and done and I'm in retirement and whatnot, I'll probably move back here and, just settle down. But I think I'll be back here probably in a couple of years, maybe.
You see yourself settling in Utah when it's all said and done?
I do. I love it. Love it here.
Glad to hear that. It's not always the case, right? When people come here for school, sometimes they want to get out. So I'm a guy, I grew up here. I moved here when I was 9 years old. I've been here ever since. So I love hearing it when guys show up, enjoy the experience, and then end up back here and raise their families and stuff. So I hope that's what happens for you, Mekhi. You've been a great member of this team. You've been an important part of this Utah football community. You've been a great guest here on our show. So I hope we run into each other after this season is over and all that. I appreciate your time, man. I really do.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys.
Happy Thanksgiving. Good luck. Stay healthy. Go get this last win, all right?
Yes, sir.
That's Mekhi Bernard for the Bernard Breakdown, brought to you by Prices Guaranteed Doors. Utah offensive captain, running back, the brightest spot on a Utah offense this year that has struggled, and we appreciate him stepping in and giving us the Bernard Breakdown on a short week for them, and obviously on a season that is far from ideal. He really has been – look, when you question, or when people are out there questioning whether or not Utah football is still the same or the Utah football culture is still the same, you don't get to ask that question about Mekhi Bernard, who's been playing banged up and forcing his way to finish games. You don't get to ask that question about Junior Tafuna, who we've heard from so much these past couple of weeks. You don't get to ask that question about a lot of guys on this team, and those captains are certainly kind of the best examples of that. So I really do appreciate Mekhi. It's been a far from ideal situation really for all of us with the Cam Rising injury. We had the Rising report. We had Cam Rising coming back on weekly, and then I felt bad for him because obviously he didn't want to have to sit here and answer questions about another injury, and felt bad for Mekhi that he didn't get the attention he deserved early on in the season, and glad that we got to have him on these last few weeks as the season comes to a close. So wishing him all the good things in the future. A lot of admiration for that dude and everything he's done for this Utah football program. And it's funny because in a year where Utah was chasing a championship, Zach, I probably wouldn't focus on that stuff. I'd probably be like, oh, that's like the moral victory stuff. That's like the feel-good, like corny, like, oh, we're proud of you, Mekhi type stuff, right? And I'd be like, no, it's about winning and losing, and it'd be like the more business-like approach. If there's a silver lining to this being a bad season, it's that you have to learn to appreciate the human element of football a little bit more than I have the most recent, more successful seasons, right? Where you don't pay attention to like what it means to the guys. You don't pay attention to the effort through adversity, because all you're paying attention to is like, well, we're going to get a championship or not. Right.
And like all teams have up and downs all the time, like an up and down season, bad season, good season. These guys come in every day, play their hearts out, practice their hearts out, work hard to achieve goals, milestones. Like you said, the 2 championships, milestones, not like, oh yeah, you guys won 2 championships. It's still a milestone, but you've got to focus on next season, season after that, whatever your future goals are.
Yeah, it's crazy because next season in a Utah football uniform doesn't exist for Mekhi, doesn't exist for Junior, doesn't exist for guys like Connor O'Toole. And so it is nothing replaces this. Nothing replaces high school football. That's pure fun. That's hanging out with your friends. That's hanging out with your boys. And if you achieve something, great. If you don't, you just got to spend a lot of time with your best friends, right?
Yep.
And then college football is a lot more business-like now even than when I was in it. But college football is an extension of that. You develop these close bonds and these irreplaceable relationships, and then you move on to whatever. And you all know this out there listening probably, because you're probably my age, maybe you're older than me. Your family life having kids is better than playing college football and being on a team. It's more meaningful. It's more important. It's the best thing in the world. But it's not the same thing. They're different categories, right? Nothing replaces that. What these guys are going to experience for the last time in a locker room in Orlando, Florida.
Yep.
Nothing replaces running out onto a field, and it doesn't have to be a football field. It could be a basketball court. It could be a soccer field. It could be lacrosse. It could be whatever. Nothing replaces team sports in your life.
Yeah.
Take it from someone who went on to, I think, some decent success in an individual sport, right?
Mm-hmm.
Your gym relationships and your camaraderie in MMA or in boxing or in whatever, like, it exists, but it's not the same as football. It's not the same as a team where the win and loss situation is on all of you and you share it. You're equally yoked, so to speak. Nothing replaces it. And I don't know. I'm getting nostalgic about it this week because there's nothing else to focus on with Utah football. We're not talking about a bowl game. We're not talking about a championship race. We're not talking about really even the NFL future for a lot of these guys. It's going to be a down year for that as well for the Utes. So, yeah, man, I'm finding myself getting soft in my old age, Zach.
Hey, you're never soft, man. You're always serious. But I've always considered this as well. A team, like, I played high school football, and my coach, Coach Monzingo, he's like, you guys are brothers.
It's a great name, by the way.
Yeah, he's a really good dude. Shout out Coach Monzingo. But he was always saying, like, you guys are brothers, you guys are family. This is your secondary family. You form these relationships. You guys are brothers for life. And I have that same view when I swam in high school, played water polo in high school, and it's like, whether or not you guys like each other, hate each other, you're still family. You got each other's backs. Yeah,
and it's actually very analogous to society and to family because you don't always like everyone on the team. Like,
no,
we're not going to put Mekhi Bernard on the spot and be like, well, who's your best friend? Who do you not like on this team? Obviously, but they are family. I'm preaching to a choir here. Everyone knows what is so special about team athletics, and I imagine all the more special because of what these guys were able to achieve together with those Pac-12 championship years. A bittersweet ending, one way or another, coming for the University of Utah. And again, big thanks to Mekhi Bernard for joining us. All right, we're going to take a break here. The Bernard Breakdown brought to you by Prices Guaranteed Doors. After the break, we're going to do a tiebreaker Tuesday. We have to explain all of the scenarios that exist for this upcoming Big 12 championship game. A 4-team tie at the top right now, but you will not believe how many teams still have a chance, technically, mathematically, still have a chance to make a college football playoff as a Big 12 champion. Sean O'Connell Show, ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN Radio Network. Sean O'Connell Show continues here on ESPN 792.1 FM. We'll call it a tiebreaker Tuesday, James. You comfortable with that? Tiebreaker Tuesday, as the Big 12 championship picture very convoluted at this particular moment.
Tiebreaker Tuesday. Yeah, let's do it. I like that.
We talked about this.
Everyone in the Big 12's tied for second, so let's go.
we did talk about this just a little bit yesterday on the show, but the Big 12, I'll give the Big 12 credit for this. They want to make sure that the media who covers the conference is well informed on the conference's position on things. So anytime there's anything regarding the conference, you get the email, and they tell you what the company line is, so to speak. And they wanted it to be very clear. I appreciate this because in past scenarios, you probably would have had to go back as a member of the media, as a dumb radio show host. You would have had to go back and been like, all right, what are all the Pac-12 bylaw tiebreakers? Let me go dig these things up. The Big 12 just refreshes everyone and says, here's how it plays out right now. And you've probably read this yourself because it has been available on Twitter and X, I should call it. Blue Sky also. I don't know if you've gone to the Blue Sky world yet, James.
I have not.
Nor have I, but
I dabbled in Threads when it looked like Twitter was going to die. And then what was that, year and a half ago?
Yeah.
Have not posted since on Threads. So
Blue Sky right now is like CrossFit was in 2009, where everyone is letting you know that they're trying out Blue Sky. And so it's probably wonderful, but I'm just like, too many people are doing it.
Well, I requested to get an account on Blue Sky because you have to have, at least a year and a half ago, I don't know if it's changed, you had to have someone who's already on Blue Sky invite you to Blue Sky.
Oh.
It's like a members-only club as far as social media goes.
Who was the first person that got to invite other people? That's what I want to know.
Whoever the founder is, I suppose.
But that founder, like the Tom of MySpace, did that person... Did they go like top down in the media world? They're just like, all right, who's the most famous? We got to get
all right, Woj
Cowherd,
first.
Woj. We got to get Dan Patrick. We'll get Joe Rogan an account. Stephen A. Smith gets one. No, I don't like
Howard
him.
Stern because he's still going inexplicably.
Ugh.
You know all about how Howard Stern's still going.
Don't get me started on the Howard Stern thing. The money that guy makes could sustain an entire corporation, just his individual salary for a year, and actually is in jeopardy of destroying a corporation because it's so exorbitant, his salary. And they put too many eggs in that Howard Stern basket over at SiriusXM. But whatever. That's not what we're here to talk about, all right? Tiebreaker Tuesday. All right.
I want to hear these scenarios.
Okay. The two-team tie scenario. Everyone gets to play one more game, right? You've got what? You've got Farmageddon coming. You've got the Territorial Cup. You've got BYU Houston. I don't know if that has a name.
The Cougar Bowl.
The Cougar. Yes, the Cougar Bowl. And every mom from Corner Canyon High School is invited to watch it. That's how it works.
Only women of a certain age invited to be in the stands.
In order to watch the game, you have to be a woman over 40 years old.
Over the age of the current athletes. How about that?
And Zach Wilson will also be there. Ding. Okay. We're digressing here. All right. Two-team tie scenarios. The two teams tied at 7-2 in conference play will be championship game participants. All right. That's the most painless. That's the clearest picture. All right. If there's a three-team tie, and that feels like how it's actually going to play out. Colorado loses. Then Arizona State will play against Iowa State. If Arizona State loses, it will be Iowa State versus BYU. So suddenly BYU fans are huge Arizona Wildcat fans. Iowa State loses. Arizona State versus BYU. BYU fans also huge Kansas State fans next weekend. So you're very pro-Wildcat if you're a BYU Cougar fan heading into next weekend.
Yeah, that makes it easy. Just Go Wildcats.
You say,
go Cougars.
You say,
not
go Cougars.
you're right, because of Houston. You're right. So
You're
just
now-
go Wildcats.
You're now very pro Wildcat, and you're very neutral on Cougars, at least for 1 week.
It kind of makes sense that they'd be pro Wildcat all the time because a Cougar is a Wildcat.
Is technically
right?
a Wildcat. Yes. So you're hoping next weekend. You're hoping like Arizona wins. You're hoping Kansas State wins. You're hoping Weber State wins because they're Wildcats.
Yeah, because just why not?
Just why not? Let's go.
I know you're always hoping Weber State
I'm always
wins.
hoping for Weber State to win. So that would be two scenarios in which Kalani Sitake's crew gets in to the Big 12 championship game. Now, a BYU loss to Houston, well, that's when it gets even more convoluted. If Texas Tech defeats West Virginia, then if Baylor beats Kansas and Cincinnati beats TCU, it will be Colorado versus Iowa State. So the Buffaloes are not yet mathematically eliminated, but they would need Texas Tech to defeat West Virginia, Baylor to beat Kansas, Cincinnati to beat TCU. Colorado is in the situation this year where Utah was in 2022.
22, yeah.
Where you needed three other teams in the Pac-12 conference to lose their game. You needed to win your game, and then you're in the championship game. All of those things played out in the Utes' favor, and of course they went on to win the conference championship game, which is wild because you would think that the team that needs all that help and kind of has to back its way in is a longer odds to win a conference championship game, but Utah just kryptonite for Caleb Williams and company. So
yeah. Ironically, the game that Utah needed to win that day against Colorado in Boulder, going full circle.
4-team tie scenario. Well, that brings you back to the 2-team tie scenario. If there's a 4-team tie, Arizona State and Iowa State have the best strength of record, and they would square off for the conference championship game. For teams 5 and 3 entering the week, all of those teams that are 5 and 3 in conference play entering the week, they must win and see at least 3 of the 4 6 and 2 teams take a loss in order for them to get in. So technically, right now with the Big 12 tiebreaker scenario, and we talked about this last week, James, late last week, how many squads were still technically alive. Now, Utah is not. Oklahoma State is not. We don't get to feel any better about our preseason rankings based on those things. But in the Big 12 conference, anyone who is 5 and 3 right now in conference play is technically not eliminated. And obviously the 6 and 2 teams, there's a 4-way tie at the top of those 6 and 2 teams right now, are still technically in place. So you have 5 teams that are 5 and 3, and you have 4 teams that are 6 and 2. That means that 9 of the 16 conference teams in the Big 12 heading into the final week of the season technically have some chance to make it into the conference championship game. That is bananas.
Is the and I'm assuming the matchup everyone wants to see, Texas Tech versus Baylor, is still in play.
Everyone is hoping to see Baylor versus Texas Tech.
2 unranked teams facing off for the Big 12 title.
So that is actually, as much as we could joke about it, that is actually a complete nightmare for the Big 12 conference because of what's going on with Boise State, what's going on with Tulane, what's going on around the country with these other mid-major teams.
Thankfully, though, Notre Dame just smashed Army.
You can't say that. We can't be happy.
No, I mean
about Army getting smashed.
But thankfully, if you're the Big 12, you're going, oh, thank goodness, because that was the clear and present danger. If Army had beaten Notre Dame, then there almost was no chance that the Big 12 gets a playoff team. Well, not almost no chance, but there was a real.
It was going to get really.
There
difficult.
was a real possibility the Big 12 might not get a playoff team.
Now, you put us in a very unpatriotic position.
I know that we are pro America on this show. I promise.
The service
we're
academies,
pro Army.
The service academies. You have to you're obligated in some way to either root for them or not actively root against them.
We love our armed forces here on the Sean O'Connell Show.
Apparently James doesn't because he's like, thankfully the Fighting Irish smashed those losers at West Point.
Me and Brady Quinn, man, we're just like, yes. Did you hear? You heard that he made a shave his head bet with DP.
Yeah, I mean,
if Notre Dame had lost, which was a pretty safe bet.
Yeah,
by him.
That's the only reason he made that bet because he knew how long the odds were for Army to beat a very good Notre Dame team. How crazy would it be? It would be very fitting for this year in college football if a Notre Dame team that earlier in the season lost to Northern Illinois ends up in the college football playoff and makes some noise there. Because if they continue to play the way they've been playing, that's what's going to happen. Well, they got USC this weekend. USC is not good, but they're talented. And we talked about last weekend, right? I felt smart for 5 seconds, James, because what did I tell you on Friday? If you listen to the Sean O'Connell show on Friday, I'll pull the sound if I have to. I'll pull my own receipts. I said Alabama versus Oklahoma. You got to watch out for Oklahoma because Oklahoma is a deeply talented roster. They are loaded with big-time players, and that's a situation where if they can just show up and they can play right for 1 week, they can beat anybody. And that's what they did. They ruined Alabama's party.
And what did I say? Brent Venables, the Clemson ties. He
That's
doesn't
right.
like the Crimson Tide, man.
He's got like a personal vendetta also against the Alabama Crimson Tide. And there is something about, I think Kalen DeBoer is an amazing coach, but there's also a lot of people in the country who don't even yet know how great of a coach Kalen DeBoer is. And he's playing in a conference right now where those guys don't have any fear of him the way they did with Nick Saban. Like, Nick Saban had the aura. He was the guy that you were just like, oh, my gosh, what chess move do I need to make because I need to anticipate his chess move, but he already anticipates that I'm going to anticipate, so he's going to do – it's like that Princess Bride poison trick thing with Nick Saban. Everyone was a little bit jittery with the exception of, like, Kirby Smart. And now –
rat poison, if you will.
Yeah, well done. And now, you know, it's Kalen DeBoer, who a lot of people are just like, oh, yeah, Kalen DeBoer. He had that great year at Washington, and he was at Fresno before that. And he was some random small South Dakota school before that. There's no vibe with Kalen DeBoer that can match what Nick Saban had. And I think that actually matters. I think that matters for opposing players, and I think it matters more for opposing coaches who don't yet have this thing in their head like, I don't know if I can out-coach this guy. In any case.
So if they had upset Michigan in the national championship game, you think
there would be more aura there.
There would have been more of a, hey, I don't know if I can outcoach this guy, and they may have gotten one or two more wins this year.
I'm probably overblowing that, but I really do think it matters. Like, confidence for a coaching staff matters. Maybe not as much as confidence for players, but it does matter.
Because that's what Saban had. Other than I think having a decent stint with the Dolphins in the NFL helped too with that aura. But that if you just take his college career into consideration, he had some good years at Michigan State, and then he had the national championship at LSU. So that really is the only difference between, if you just look at the college careers between he and Kalen DeBoer pre-Alabama. You may have something there.
Back to the tiebreakers on a tiebreaker Tuesday here. Friday, you've got a couple of games, obviously. So Colorado is going to have to sweat it out, assuming they take care of business as they host Oklahoma State. And then, of course, Utah and UCF are going to square off that game wildly in a season where every other game, or in a weekend where every other game matters for the Big 12 standings. That game kind of doesn't matter. That's depressing. In a season that you've already had enough reason to be bothered and depressed by the results, Utah and UCF are squaring off in like the only game that doesn't have high stakes. Neither of these teams can gain bowl eligibility. Neither of these teams can influence the conference championship picture at this point. And pretty much every other game has at least one participant with some stake in that final run. Again, for Baylor, for West Virginia and Texas Tech, for TCU, the odds are long that you're going to be in that conversation when the weekend is over. but you're telling me there's a chance. With enough tiebreakers in front of you, it could happen that James could get the highly desired Baylor-Texas Tech Big 12 championship game. And then in that case, to bring us full circle, the Big 12 gets no college football playoff representation.
Yeah, no way. Like
Absolutely not. There's
Tulane, if they beat Tulane or Army, whoever wins the American is going to get that other conference championship bid, you would think. Which would be depressing, but it'd be fun if you like chaos, but depressing if you're a Big 12 fan.
I don't know. I mean, we talked about this yesterday, and we could talk about it more today. I don't know if college football fans actually do love chaos, because last weekend was a very chaotic weekend, not even as much in the Big 12 conference, although there was plenty of that. But for the SEC, it was a wildly chaotic weekend, and usually because the SEC is, the behemoth at the top, usually that means there's a ripple effect of chaos across the country. And seeing the way that, fellow media members have reacted to it, seeing the way that I think some of the television networks are trying to, adjust to the expectation of, so Alabama should be out. And Ole Miss, who's been a fun story for us this year, should be out. Okay, well, Georgia's back in. That's good, I guess. It's really kind of fascinating to watch the reaction from everyone. And look, we're 1 week of regular season college football left, but conference championship weekend is also going to be insane. And there's, depending on if there's blowouts or a bunch of close games there, that's going to reshape this expanded 12-team playoff. So last week, I came on the air and said, hey, did we break college football by trying to fix it? And then this past weekend happened, and it's like, actually, no, everything's really good. Because everybody
fixed again.
Everybody still has a reason to watch these weekends of college football. There's not a state in the union that doesn't have some big university with at least some peripheral interest in the college football playoff. Hawaii, Alaska, the Montanas, the Dakotas, and Idaho have no play. Everyone else has something to root for or against.
Yeah.
That's wild.
It is wild, but that's everyone who said, who's the loser of the weekend, OC?
Actually, you know what?
All the people who said that expanded playoff makes the regular season less exciting, because this is way more exciting than it's been in a long time.
There's only actually one rooting interest for the state of California in the college football playoff, which is crazy to think about. The only rooting interest that the state of California could have right now is wanting to see USC beat Notre Dame to spoil things for Notre Dame.
Because Notre Dame's out if they get another loss, you would think.
If you lose to not a bad USC team or a substandard USC team, yes, you're out. You can't afford bad losses this time of year. You could afford what the heck happened there if it's in week 1 through 5. But if you're now down to this, conversation is happening in earnest. The committee's actually meeting. They're watching these games for real. They're talking about them every single week. If you go and you lay an egg against a drastically disappointing USC team, then you yourself become drastically disappointing. And there's plenty of that going around. Some of that here in Salt Lake City.
Yeah, what a weird year. But also very fun as a college football fan in general. Obviously, there's specific fans like University of Utah fans may not think this season is very fun, but if you look at nationally, this has been a fun college football season, and I think, again, everyone who said, hey, this is going to dilute the regular season has been dead wrong.
All right, Sean O'Connell Show continues. Since I just mentioned USC flipped a recruit from, you guessed it, the University of Utah. How big a loss is this in the upcoming class, and is it a sign of more daunting things to come for Kyle Whittingham and company? We'll talk about that on the Sean O'Connell Show. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN Radio Network. All right, I just told you about it. I teased it, Lee. Now we've got to talk about it on the Sean McConnell Show, ESPN 792.1 FM. Recruiting is coming. Recruiting season is already upon us. Probably upon the coaching staff, at least. You're probably not fully dialed in as a fan just yet, but you need to be because this is going to be one of the most impactful years of recruiting for Utah football. How do you mitigate? How do you stop the bleeding? How do you pause some of the damage that has been done by a bad season? Well, right now the trend is not looking super encouraging. USC has stolen another recruit from the University of Utah's projected class in 2025. Nila Tupou, Folsom High School, 3-star tight end, so not the most high-profile guy you've had, not the one that people were super excited about, not one that everyone's probably as familiar with as you were with the kid from American Fork who flipped and is going to USC. But Lincoln Riley, it's really interesting. USC must have found somebody who is not only wealthy but also is patient to support this Lincoln Riley endeavor. His seat is warm, but not to the point where they're going to fire him yet. And there's still a lot of resources being deployed through that Student Body Right, I think is the name of their NIL foundation. And these guys are being incentivized not only, well, they're not being incentivized by success. They're not being incentivized by the team being good because the team is not good at USC. They're being incentivized by money. They're being incentivized by, well, probably the weather. That campus is not anything to write home about. It's in kind of a dumpy neighborhood. You all know this. The stadium itself, meh. The program, legendary, but kids don't care about that as much these days. And again, USC gets a flip from Utah. Now, if you're a recruit who is committed to the University of Utah, you're probably wondering if that's the right thing for you moving forward, coming off a season where Utah, who's, it's death, taxes, and Utah football, like Joel Klatt said before the season started. Except that this year that wasn't true. So how do you maintain that consistency? How do you promise parents and recruits this was a freak year, this was an anomaly? How do you do that? And how do you do it for offensive personnel, especially when you have to announce very soon who your offensive coordinator is going to be? You have to announce whether the succession plan is in place today, if Morgan Scalley is going to be taking over. Like December 4th is the early signing day, if I'm not mistaken. December 9th is when the transfer portal opens. Those are the two primary sources of new talent for your team. And you need to be able to look at those guys and answer the questions that they have, especially on the offensive side of the ball. So USC stole an offensive lineman from you a month ago. Now they take a tight end away from you, and they are not the only shark in the water smelling blood and circling this Utah football program. I am never one to overreact one way or another to a commitment from a high school player. And I hope you're not either. It's obviously better if you can bring in guys who have a higher ceiling and guys who are rated higher, 4 stars. Utah doesn't really get 5 stars, but that's nice, right? It's also not a hard science. We've seen too many guys that were, wow, look, this is the highest rated quarterback recruit in the state of Southern California. This is the guy who broke all of Matt Barkley's high school records. This is a guy who's now on his 3rd school where he hasn't really done much at that school, right? There's just as many misses as there are hits. And Utah, this will be the case. This has been the case, will continue to be the case. Utah is a place where you find the diamonds in the rough. They're harder to sift through now. It's harder to compete and keep those guys now than it used to be, but they're still out there. The Big 12 Conference has the number 1 diamond in the rough in the entire country. And he hurt Utah and he hurt BYU. And Cam Scadaboo is that guy who no longer falls through the cracks permanently. He falls through the cracks coming out of high school, and then he ends up at a place like Arizona State, Arizona State's got a chance to play for a college football playoff position, largely because of Cam Scatterboot. That is wild. So when these guys flip or go somewhere else, it's not the end of the world, but you don't want it to be a trend. You don't want it to be a wave. If it's a trickle and if it's a few isolated incidents, fine. But this is a massively important recruiting year for the University of Utah. Huge.
It is, and it's obviously pretty concerning that they've already had a bunch of guys flip. This is just the latest of that, flip their commitments. But it's not, as you said, high school is not the end-all, be-all anymore in recruiting. The transfer portal has changed everything. If you can continue to lean on what you've always leaned on, like what you've been saying, finding those diamonds in the rough from the high school ranks and continuing to be one of the best developmental programs in the country, if not the best, and turning them into great college players, whether that's a role player or star players, then you're still in this as a growing program, as a growing national brand kind of program. If you can't, then might have some lean years going forward with the University of Utah. That's why this is such a big recruiting cycle for the Utes.
I will say this though: don't get too obsessed with the recruiting rankings and the classes. Like some of the best teams that Utah's ever had came out of the years where you were like the number 52 ranked recruiting class in the country or whatever. So it's an update for you, but I'm not painting the doom and gloom picture because it just doesn't make sense.
Ute recruit Mageddon. We're not doing that.
We're not Mageddon. We're not going to do the Mageddon on everything.
We're not doing that.
We're not going to do that yet. Recruit Mageddon.
Recruit Mageddon with Ute at the end. UTE instead of UIT, right?
Yes.
Or
yes.
IUT, whatever.
We won't spell recruit properly. We'll spell it recruit.
Recruit.
Gosh, this show's really falling apart. Gosh, it's bad. All right.
You're welcome.
Hour 3 coming. Jeff Schwartz. My guy, Jeff Schwartz. Talk a little NFL football. Talk a little college football. As everyone else panics and freaks out, Jeff and the rest of the Oregon Duck fans are just kind of sitting back, twiddling their thumbs. I'll see what the level of concern for him as the real rivalry game, Oregon and Washington, looms. Jeff Schwartz next on the Sean O'Connell Show. It's ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN Radio Network. I'll play it on the show on a Tuesday, a short week. For me, I'm going to travel to do some football duties. Friday championship fights on Black Friday. Of course, Utah back in action one last time against UCF. College football regular season coming to a close. For some teams, that means the season is coming to a close. For teams like the Oregon Ducks, the alma mater of my next guest, well, we expect that they will have a long run in the college football playoff one way or another. Jeff Schwartz stops by once again on the Sean O'Connell Show. Hey, Jeff.
How are you, buddy? You're just an international world traveler. I'm very jealous. Sorry, I had the same thought this weekend. I went to the Panthers-Chiefs game. I was at a Chiefs-Panthers game this weekend with my son, Sean. And you know how you said it was a long time ago when you thought, like, I'm watching these guys play, and I'm thinking to myself, like, I can't believe I did this. I mean, it's been 8 years now. Like, it's been a long time. And I'm like, I can't believe I did this. I used to do this, like, put my body in this harm's way every weekend.
So no thoughts from Jeff Schwartz to unretire like Shaq Barrett is reportedly trying to do right now?
Zero chance. Zero chance. I might come back and – do you guys need help at quarterback? I can play quarterback. I was 7th grade flag football quarterback.
I feel like that's a low blow for all the Utah fans that are already suffering, and that's not endorsed by the program here. We don't approve of Jeff Schwartz taking a shot at the Utah quarterback situation. We do need to talk about – once again, Utah loses a close game, a heartbreaker, one-score game, again at home, and it comes down to the season being a complete disaster. And you're now down to Luke Batari. He started the season, I guess, as the projected fifth-string quarterback, but he will be the fourth different guy to start a game at the quarterback position for Utah. And they only have one more guy, one backup quarterback on the roster behind him, and then the room is empty. So have you been on a team where it got this dire at the quarterback position?
Yes, exactly. I know this is actually 2007. My Oregon Ducks, we were undefeated, and then Dennis Hickson got hurt, and we'd already lost the kid we were redshirting, who was going to be who we were redshirting in case of injury. Essentially, he would have played, but he had tore his ACL in practice 2 weeks previous to Dennis Hickson getting hurt. So we went into UCLA and we're undefeated. We had lost Arizona when Dennis got hurt, right? For the second time. We bring in Brady Leaf, Ryan Leaf's brother, and he breaks his foot in the next game. So now we have I think it was either a redshirt freshman or a true freshman playing his first time in that game. We scored 0 points. We were the best offense in the country. It was very embarrassing. And then we played at home against Oregon State. And our fourth-string quarterback, the kid who played against UCLA, he started the game, got concussed, and we finished the game with a fifth-string quarterback. And that fifth-string quarterback started our bowl game for us a month later. And we kicked South Florida's butt because we gave him a month to prepare. But, yeah, I've been in this exact same position, dude. I know exactly how this feels. And that's why I made that joke earlier, because I can talk about the experience of this. And, look, I was watching the game the other night because I bet on Iowa State live. I was like, there's no way. Utah had 60 yards at halftime or something, and now you're a fifth-string quarterback. And what they did in the second half offensively is sort of what you have to do. You have to run the quarterback. You got to move him out of the pocket. You got to find easy throws. You can just not – you have to avoid that third and long, right, Sean? You have to avoid a situation where he truly has to pass. And That's what we did against South Florida in the bowl game. Like we owned first and second down. So if it was third down, it was third and short, and you can run the ball then, but you can also just sort of muck up pass plays, right? Just like little quick stuff here and there, and that's what Utah has to do this weekend. You have to win first and second down to make third down manageable, or get a first down, obviously, and just avoid those third and longs. If you get to second and 8 and third and 9, those are spots you cannot win, but you have to just use the quarterback's legs, which if you hit that long running, down the right sideline there against Iowa State this weekend, like you get to do those things to help your offense. And look, ideally too, you have to do the same thing. You have to score on defense, maybe, block a punt. Like those are things that you have to do with a fifth-string quarterback.
So Isaac Wilson is out for the remainder of this year. Kyle Whittingham said he would be available for spring ball if he decides to return to the University of Utah. That seems to be up in the air because of the whole transfer portal situation and the way this year went for him. I have to ask you, though, what does it say about this offense, about the quarterback talent evaluation, about the situation with Isaac Wilson when they brought in Brandon Rose and the coaching staff itself admitted, there was a spark when Isaac Wilson's backup came in and played. And then they said the same thing again when Luke Batari came in. Oh, yeah, there was a nice little spark when he came in and played. What does it say when your number 2 quarterback can't find the offensive spark, but the 3 guy and the 4 guy and the whoever else can find the spark? Is that a play-calling situation? Because you just described for me the ways you can make Luke Batari successful, and they were able to do that to some extent, at least that Iowa State game. So I'm trying to figure out if there's a spark from Brandon Rose and there's a spark from Luke Batari, why Isaac Wilson was the guy as a true freshman, especially a true freshman who got a little yippy and got a little banged up.
Well, correct me if I'm wrong. Didn't he started the Colorado game, right? Or was it? And then he ended up playing well in the second half. Like the spark has been there at times in this offense. It's just, Sean, it's hard as a true freshman. It doesn't matter where you're at, what team you play for. Like, we talk about this all the time. And, like, to expect perfection from Wilson, he wasn't supposed to play this season, right? I mean, it's Cam Rising's job. And you can say, well, maybe they should have had a better backup if Cam Rising got hurt. I mean, there's an argument to be had, but he wasn't supposed to play this season. So when you bring in players that have played longer than him, right, those quarterbacks you mentioned have been in the program longer, they probably have more confidence. They probably have a little bit more leadership abilities, and that's probably showing in what we're talking about. But I just want to reiterate, like, Wilson is a true freshman, man, who wasn't supposed to play this season. It's hard. It's hard to true freshman. Look at I'm trying to other examples of true freshmen. Look at Raiola right now in Nebraska. He's supposed to be Patrick Mahomes, and like week to week, it's like he looks like a terrible quarterback and then a great quarterback. It's hard. It's a true freshman, and so I think we have to cut Wilson a little bit of slack and think about this. And it's something we've talked about for years now. He's playing in an offense that doesn't have explosive play capabilities, which is hard. Like when you have a young quarterback, it's nice sometimes just to throw a go route to someone and go make a play, right?
And he kind of did that. The first play of the game against Iowa State was the most explosive play the offense has produced in like the last few weeks. I don't blame Isaac Wilson for any of this. I guess I'm asking that question because it's like, well, if it looks like the backups behind him have a better response from their teammates, or you're better at play calling when those guys are in, then why is the freshman the one who's in?
Yeah, but it's not really true though. Like when you look at the way they play, you might say things like that, but the results don't really speak to that. I mean, the offense but McCartney had the long run, that one long run. Otherwise, the offense wasn't great when he was in. I mean, I don't know even if Iowa State prepared for that, and that's something that happens in games too when you bring that running quarterback and the defense is not ready for it, and they dash one quickly, and then the defense figures it out. I mean, it's a lot different this weekend, and UCS defense stinks, so it might not be a great. My point might not make much sense when you watch them play on Friday, but like if you are playing a good defense, you've had a week to prepare for a running quarterback. You're going to be better prepared for that. I don't think that's something Iowa State prepared for. It didn't look that way when he ripped off those runs on that one drive. But I don't think it means anything. Like, when you surround a quarterback with a good play caller and better weapons, we see all the time what the end result is. And I think that's what Utah has to focus on. If Wilson does stay, I would, and I like Andy Ludwig, so I don't think he had to go. I think he kind of just fell on the sword when he probably didn't have to.
Agree.
But like, go find a D2, head coach and be like, but your offense, you score 50 points a game in D2, come be our OC. Like, I think you have to go young, aggressive, like fun, up tempo. The pro style thing is great if you have pro style weapons. Like Michigan this year is a great example, right? Last year, pro style, right? And this year, it's like, well, offensive line's not as good, quarterback's not as good, or receivers aren't as explosive. And it's like, look what their offense is. Like, you can run a pro style offense if you have the pro style pieces, and maybe they're going to try to retool with pro style pieces. But I don't know, man. I'm always going to default to like hiring. And I obviously have firsthand experience with Chip Kelly being that guy from New Hampshire, and maybe that skews the way I view this. But you look at even what Walker's did, right? We got Kenny Dillingham and Will Stein from UTSA, who was coaching high school like 4 years ago. I mean, I think that's a plan you can have with a defensive coach, right? Let's play good defense and let's give other teams things to worry about offensively that just really aren't, especially if your offensive line's not going to be. I mean, all these reasons why sometimes that offense can really function well. And of course, look, when you play a big dog, is it tougher to run some of those? Gimmick's the wrong word, but some of those offenses, absolutely. Utah has been built to play well against teams that are good in the trenches because that's what they do. But I don't know, man. I think it's time to look at some sort of different way to do offense because you don't have the personnel, I think, to run this pro-style offense anymore.
Jeff Schwartz, our guest here on the Sean O'Connell Show, talking a little college football. We'll get to some NFL before we cut him loose as well. Your Ducks stand alone, undefeated atop the country, and the figuring out process is going to be really interesting with the chaotic weekend that happened, especially with some big-time SEC brands falling, and Alabama goes down, and Lane Kiffin goes down after being like, I don't know if anyone even wants to be in the SEC championship game. I don't have to worry about it now, Lane. So how crazy is the college football playoff ranking picture going to look tonight?
Well, just remember, though, when the SEC loses to a 5-loss team, it's because 5-win team. It's because that 5-win team is so good.
Yes,
when
correct.
a Pac-12 school did it, Sean, it's because we suck.
Yes,
it's just like the Pac-12 stuff, but the SEC, that they're just so much superior to everyone else that when a team loses to, and now Florida's different because Lagway makes them really different team. But it's just so funny how that narrative is, right? Like, oh, a 3-loss SEC team, but a 10-1 Pac-12 team is like, it stinks. Look, I think we sort of know the bubble of teams that'll probably make the playoff. This weekend will sort of like if Texas A&M beats Texas, they're not totally in yet because if they lose to Georgia in the SEC championship game, they're not letting a 4-loss team into the playoff. We think the Big Ten is pretty much the 4 teams we think. The ACC is a question, right? If Clemson beats South Carolina this weekend but doesn't play in the ACC championship game, are they in with 2 losses? Is South Carolina in if they win this weekend with 3 losses? I mean, so I think the teams are pretty set on who's going to sort of be in and out. I think the G5 one is pretty interesting because Boise State, look, they don't play anybody. Like they play Oregon State this weekend, and they play. I think UNLV will end up being the team they played, and them being ranked will be important. But Tulane will get 2 ranked. They get Memphis this weekend, who's ranked, and Army to finish out, and they might pass Boise State. And so, and then the Big 12 is just chaos, right? I mean, it's basically Arizona State wins out, they're in, and Iowa State. It was a tough game. They're only a 3-point favorite at home against Kansas State. So again, I think that the teams are sort of. The bubble of teams is set. It's just a matter of who sort of gets in, and the fun part about sort of where the committee ends up putting these teams. I feel comfortable. I think you probably do too. That 1 and 5 is Ohio State and Oregon in either direction, right? Whoever wins the game is 1. Whoever loses is 5, and then everything else is sort of up in the air. I feel like
if Colorado doesn't win the Big 12 championship and doesn't make a college football playoff, does that cost Travis Hunter a Heisman Trophy?
No. This one to me seems really interesting, Sean, because And it's funny. It's like college football watchers and pro stout people, and then there's Boise State fans, where it's the argument against Travis Hunter is that he's not the best at either position. Maybe not, but he's top 5 in both of them. He's top 5 in 2 positions. 2. Imagine if he just played cornerback or just played wide receiver. He'd probably be the best of either one of those things.
I believe you.
And then I get Genty's incredible. Don't get me wrong, he's fantastic. But I mean, Travis Hunter's again. I think he played. The Boise State thing is he plays so many snaps. He does it pretty well. I don't know. He's going to be the number one pick in the draft. If it's not a quarterback, he'd be the guy. And NFL can be you want to play corner or wide receiver? I think it's easily Travis Hunter. And because he's not a quarterback, his game doesn't rely on the wins and losses as much as it does for Shedeur, right? Or Cam Ward or Dylan Gabriel. It's about production on the field. I mean, even if let's say Boise State has a weird loss to Oregon State this weekend and Genty has 200 yards, it's not going to matter per se because we look at their numbers, right? But I don't want this to be anti G5 thing, but you're playing Wyoming and you're playing who they played the week before, Nevada and San Jose State. It's not at Kansas, it's just not. Boise State is, and I don't want to take anything away from their schedule, but they're playing San Jose State and Nevada, and it's not playing on the road at Colorado, and I think that factors into it. And even though Genty is incredible, he's a great football player, he is one of the best running backs, if not the best, since probably Adrian Peterson has been in college football, just 25 years now. So I don't nothing away from Genty, but there's a reason why Hunter's the overwhelming favorite. What he does on the field is incredible, dude. And I think people don't understand this. He's 5th in the country, I think, in receptions and yards, and 3rd in touchdowns, a wide receiver. So he's doing this, and also a lockdown corner. It's never been done before.
Yeah, I mean, I've been campaigning for it since the beginning of the season, basically, and I think he's going to win it. But I didn't know if Colorado had to be, front of mind at the end of the season for that momentum to be maintained. I don't think it should be a significant issue, but I'm glad you agree. All right, before I let you go, I want to, extend a question I just asked you about college football to the NFL. We're more than halfway through the NFL regular season. Teams that we thought were going to be great, like my Niners, not so much. The Detroit Lions are, I think, the best team in the NFC right now. But,
yes.
The cream sort of rises to the top over the course of any regular season. Today, how many teams are Super Bowl contenders in your mind? And I guess who are they?
Well, Lions, Eagles, I think feels very comfortable in the NFC, right? I mean, I don't really know, I don't really have a great other couple teams there, right? I think those are pretty much on track. The NFC West will have maybe a fun playoff team, but not something that I think is something that you would consider a Super Bowl contender. And the AFC is the Chiefs, I guess. I mean, we do this every year. We're I don't know about the Chiefs, and they win the Super Bowl. They have legit problems right now at corner and pass rush and left tackle. The Bills, the Ravens with the win last night, I think are back in that consideration, right? And then probably it. I mean, it's probably 5 teams right now. I don't know if anyone else. You'll like this story, by the way. So I go to the game this weekend. I'm with Alex, right? And there's a guy behind me, a Panthers fan. Every single time a flag was thrown in the game, he would yell one of 2 things. The NFL is scripted, or there goes the Chiefs' 12th man. It was so up. And then people be like, that's a flag on the Chiefs. He'd be like, oh, okay. And at one point, someone was like, dude, shut up. And he's like, oh, I'm just all the red. I know the red people here are angry with me, but all the Panthers fans will be happy with me. I'm like, dude, every after game, I was like, what does the 12th man mean? I'm like, Alex, don't worry about it. I'm not explaining it to you. Just so, and also savage move, by the way. I talked to the Chiefs player about getting sideline passes, all right? And I know for road games that they're limited, but I figured this wasn't a road game where a lot of friends and family are going to show up, right?
Right.
And because we're rooting for the Chiefs, I didn't want to go through the Panthers. I thought it'd be a little disrespectful, right, to show up for in Chiefs gear with Panthers sideline passes, all right? So I hit up one of the offensive linemen I know, and he's like, yeah, I got you. You're set. So I'm like, good. So he calls me Saturday. He's like, yeah, man, the owners came in and took all the sideline passes. And I was like, oh, okay. I mean, I can't know anything about that. And I got a text from the Chiefs PR guy, Sean, who reiterated that. He's like, dude, I'm so sorry, but the ownership came in and basically took all the extra sideline passes we had. So it's savagely just like my sideline pass disappeared.
Wait, why? What was there a reason? Were they like entertaining investors on the sideline or something?
They requested more than they thought they were going to request.
Wow.
And I guess they wait till Saturday to do so. I don't know. I guess. I mean, I thought you, like the rest of us, you put your sideline request in on Monday or Tuesday, and they set, they get them done that way. But yeah, they just vanished from my hand. Alex is the best kid ever, so he didn't care. But I was pretty bummed.
Brutal.
I found that out. And the ownership just like, nope. My guess is I saw them they went to NASCAR, like the Hendricks or whatever. I bet they like let some of the NASCAR people come on the field or something. I don't know.
I will propose this as an idea next time, because I really do believe that if you just walked up to the stairs that go down like to the field, because of your considerable size, people already think that you're like former player, which you are, maybe still a player, which you probably could be if you had stayed healthy, right? Like, so you could just go up and the little stadium services person just say hello to them and walk past them. They're not going to stop you, Jeff. They're like, yeah, no, that's an NFL offensive lineman.
Yeah, I guess I could have done that, but I obviously I don't know. I feel awkward doing stuff like that.
Yeah,
sometimes.
see, you got my best friend in the whole world has gotten into like Disneyland that way. He's just like, he gets into anywhere he wants to go just by walking past the security and saying hello to him and acting like he belongs there. It's the wildest thing. So you definitely could have done that.
Sometimes I do that sometimes. Like when I went to Panthers training camp and they were like, "Oh, your son's not allowed on the field with you. Only you are allowed on the field." I was like, okay, whatever. I just took him on the field with me. Like, oh, cool. You're not gonna let my son on the field with me and like stop. Please throw me out of practice. So I did it. I did it for that. It didn't help that Alex was wearing like bright yellow that day.
Too noticeable.
Bright yellow Nike Pegasus shoes. Poor kid, man. I'm going to break his heart because he wants. If Oregon makes it, obviously, to the last game of the season, it's in Atlanta. I'm going to go, and he's like, "Can I come with you?" And I no, but I haven't told him yet. Poor kid. He's going to be really sad.
Don't worry. They're not going to make it to the championship anyway. It's fine.
Sean, I need one in my lifetime. That's all I ask for.
Yeah,
one championship.
You and Phil Knight have the same goal.
We've considerably less influence on how to get that done. But I just cheer. All I can bring is my happiness and my Oregon cheerleading on social media. He brings the money.
I know I got to let you go, but I'm going to ask you this before I do, because I'm traveling today, and you travel even more than I do, but it's always recreational. When does the trip start for you? Is it when you wake up that day knowing you're going to travel? Is it when you leave for the airport? Everyone sees the start of the trip at a different point. When is it happening for Jeff Schwartz?
Oh, man. Like a work trip or like a pleasure trip?
A trip that you're looking forward to. Some work trips you like, right?
Oh, if it's a trip I'm looking forward to, it's when I sit on the airplane.
Okay.
A work trip is just, it is what it is. I don't even think about it. Like I can go to New York every week for work now. I just get on the plane. I've done it, I did it 20 times last year. I'll do it 20 times this year. I just get on the plane and just my life continues. I work and I do, I don't sleep on planes like you do. So I just do work stuff and watch dumb shows on my iPad. But if I'm with Meredith, the trip starts like when we sit we sit in the very back row. So when we sit in the back row,
yes.
Sure. That's when it starts.
Yes. Jeff Schwartz hasn't been in the back of a plane since he was 4 years old. All right. You can't even fit. That's not even possible.
My kids haven't either, which is the sad part.
We're raising spoiled children, you more than me, but everyone is. So, all right. Have a happy Thanksgiving. Thanks for joining me. I always appreciate you, dude.
Thank you, buddy. My dog just ate my ear pod. Have a good one, bud.
Jeff's dog's just been messing with his life. Great stuff, as it always is, from Jeff Schwartz. All right, I have to tell this story. We got some sound from it. It's actually not even my story. It's Mike Vrabel went on the Manning cast and told a little anecdotal story about Urban Meyer, and it touched my heart because I have a similar story about Urban Meyer. You're going to love this. The Murphy story comes back on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 792.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN radio network.
You're tuned to the Sean O'Connell Show from the Murdoch Chevrolet studio of ESPN 792.1 FM.
How do I know you?
Yeah, I'm on your team.
Do you think Coach knows who you are now?
I still don't think he did.
You know, I can relate with Owen Wilson. I was listening earlier, you know, Urban Meyer asked him, do I know you? And Urban Meyer was coaching the Titans. He was coaching the Jaguars, and he actually said the same thing to me. I said, yeah, I'm the head coach for the Titans, and I worked for you for 2 years.
Sean O'Connell Show on a Tuesday, ESPN 792.1 FM. Owen Wilson and Mike Vrabel both have similar stories interacting with Urban Meyer. Apparently, the former Utah head coach, former Florida head coach, former Ohio State head coach, now part of the Big Noon Kickoff crew, Crimson Club Hall of Famer, right? I mean, he's a legend. Apparently, he has like a facial recognition problem with people. You know, there's actually a psychological disorder, a diagnosable psychological disorder where you cannot recognize people's faces. So I don't want to make light of that if Urban Meyer's inability to recognize people goes that far. But it makes me feel a little bit better about my own relationship or lack thereof with my former head coach, because I've said it many times. There's absolutely no way that even if I had gone up to Urban Meyer during that Fiesta Bowl season, like at the grocery store, and been like, hey, do you know who I am? There's no chance he would have known.
So you're saying maybe he's got some face blindness?
He's got face blindness. Urban Meyer didn't know who Owen Wilson was. Now, like, to be fair, although that's hilarious to all of us, sometimes these football coaches are just not involved in the pop culture sphere at all. Like,
true.
You could probably.
What was it, Kirby Smart, who didn't know any Taylor Swift songs or claimed to not know any Taylor Swift songs last year?
Let's say that, like, Post Malone walked up to Kyle Whittingham at a Utah football game, because that's really a possibility. Post lives here, right? Let's say that Post Malone walked up to Coach Witt without anyone telling him who that was. Do you think Kyle Whittingham knows who Post Malone is? Like, would visually recognize him? He's probably heard the name. He's maybe heard a song being played on the speakers of practice or whatever. But do you think that Kyle Whittingham would be like, oh, yeah, that's Post Malone?
He might not. Now,
who's as distinct looking as you could possibly be.
Don't they he's been to a fair number of Utah games, right? Or maybe not.
I don't know.
And if they featured him on the video board at Utah games. Anyway, that's the only thing that would make me go, maybe he would recognize him, but maybe he's not necessarily looking at the video board when it's not showing a replay, so I don't know.
So I actually give Urban Meyer a pass on not realizing who Owen Wilson is.
It's still funny. So funny. Like, and the best part is Owen Wilson just played with the bit and went, like the comedian that he is, his instincts were perfect. Instead of going, well, I'm Owen Wilson. I'm in a lot of comedy movies. You've probably seen a lot of my movies. No, he goes, I'm on your team.
I'm glad he said that, too, because I guarantee that made Urban panic, because Urban doesn't know all the guys on his team. There's no way he knows the faces of all the guys on his team. In fact,
you know that for sure from experience.
It makes me feel better about the whole Murphy story, where nobody, like, the coaching staff never learned my name was actually Sean O'Connell. One guy called me Murphy on accident one day, and if Urban Meyer knows anything about me at all, it's that I would be Murphy. So that makes me not feel as bad. I give him a pass on Owen Wilson, but Mike Vrabel.
Yeah, Mike Vrabel. That was bad.
Who was his defensive line coach at Ohio State,
and one of the more notable recent alums of Ohio State football,
and a Super Bowl champion,
and one of the better head coaches in the league at that time,
and a guy who's coaching in the same division as you,
man,
across the sideline. Where do I know you from? And according to Mike Vrabel, he had to explain to Urban Meyer, well, I'm the head coach of the Tennessee Titans, and also I was on your staff at Ohio State for 2 years. That is incredible and so believable to me.
Yeah.
Because I think, James, maybe you haven't heard me tell this story. I'm not going to tell the whole Murphy story again, but at the end of the season, when we were down at Scottsdale Community College getting ready for the Fiesta Bowl practices, right? The way bowl game practices work is, like, you already know what you've got if your seniors are healthy, if your upperclassmen are healthy. That was a huge game for Utah. But we knew we were going to smash Pitt, and the coaching staff knew we were going to smash Pitt. And guys like Morgan Scalley and Alex Smith and those dudes, they weren't being asked to practice a ton leading up to the bowl game, all right? So what that meant was that a lot of the young guys like us, the red shirts, the walk-ons, the freshmen, all these dudes, like, we were practicing full big practices. And it was great because you actually got to play football for real. Anyway, we were down there, and a group of us walked past the coach after, like, a water break or something, and he was talking with his director of football operations at the time, a guy who I think followed him to Florida and Ohio State, who was on the staff. And I don't know why I stopped and was looking back at coach or whatever, but Urban looked at one of the players on the team who'd been on the team for the whole entire season, James, and was like, who the bleep is that? And the director of football operations guy, this staffer, was just like, what do you mean? Who? And he's like, number blank. And my heart jumped into my throat because I was like, please tell me he's not talking about me. He doesn't even know that I'm supposed to be here on his team at the end of the season. But no, it was somebody else who I'm like, there's no way he doesn't know who that guy is. But he said, no, that guy. And the staffer, the director of football operations, looks at it was just like in disbelief, just like, that's so-and-so. What are you talking? And he's like, he's on this team? He was like, Urban was like bothered, confused. I think he was like, hey, did someone sneak into our practice?
Yeah.
Who is that guy running around all sweaty in a uniform? He seemed like he was bothered that someone like
some kind of
their
spy.
Way. And I was like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, what is going on here? And I just laughed about it and never told the guy, told a couple of the other guys on the team, but never told the guy in question because knowing, like, I would have been devastated. I was fine.
Because this is a guy who played a little bit. It sounds like
I was fine with the idea that like if the coaching staff knew me, it was only by some stupid nickname, but at least they would know who I was. When I saw a head coach be like, "Who is that?" It was 13 weeks into a season, and he'd been there all 13 weeks plus camp. So anyway, this is actually we need to get Urban Meyer diagnosed to see if he has, it's called prosopagnosia, okay? It means you can't recognize faces. We need to see if Urban Meyer has this particular agnosia disorder.
He's got to, right? Like the people, the stories that we're hearing, especially like you said, Mike Vrabel is the most egregious one. It's like, that's Mike Vrabel. What are you talking about?
Does Urban Meyer,
he was on your staff.
Does Urban Meyer know who Brady Quinn is when he sits down and does shows with him?
Does he know the people he does his shows with?
Like, you know what's crazy is they should run a test and be like, pick someone that Urban did his first few broadcasts with that's not part of it anymore.
Yes.
And bring that person back and see if Urban even recognizes
or maybe his regular studio, because he was a studio analyst with ESPN for a year. Maybe his regular studio anchor from that time. Hey, show him a picture of him. Hey, who's this?
I now need a game show, a reality show where it's just Urban Meyer sitting there in front of a camera. And he gets shown pictures of former like prominent players on his team
that he coached.
And he has to name who they are.
Yeah, and pictures from the time he coached them.
Yes.
Not what they look like now.
Like throw a picture of like Paris Warren, Steve Savoy, Alex Smith. He would remember, like, would he remember Jesse Boone? Would he remember Chris Kemoyatu? Because those guys,
I want to know if he remember Quinton Ganther. He was on his staff at Jacksonville too. Like, I mean, is that a Mike Vrabel situation?
Okay, James, set this up. We need a Zoom call with Urban Meyer where we are able to show him pictures of guys who have been players for him or have been on his staff previously. And we'll start with Quinton Ganther.
Oh man, the most recent former player who was on his staff.
I guess it was like, 5 years ago when the 2004 team was inducted into the Crimson Club Hall of Fame as a team. Yeah. And they had this reception, and it was like a little reunion. Everyone went there, and it was great. It was fun.
Was Urban there?
Urban was there.
Yeah, okay.
Right? Urban was there. Now, looking back on that, I want to know how many of the faces how many of the faces in that room he knew. Because when he comes back, I know there's certain guys that he loved and he still loves, and that like they'll post a picture on social media. They all went to breakfast with Urban Meyer or whatever. But it's like the same 6 guys.
Yeah.
So he knows who they are.
He seems to know them.
How many players of the 105-man roster could he actually name? I'll bet it's fewer than 20.
And then you think about guys who are linemen who may have lost a lot of weight since they played, like Gunther, for example. How well do you remember Gunther?
He recruited Kyle Gunther. Like, would he remember Kyle Gunther? Probably not.
Because he looks so different.
But actually,
right?
He does look a lot different.
He looks a lot different, so there's that. But I wonder...
I want this. I need this to be, like, this would be the best bit.
Shout out to Gunther, by the way.
This would be a great bit for Fox to do.
Yes.
On Big Noon. They wouldn't, because it would be too demeaning for Coach Meyer.
As long as Urban's in on the joke and he's okay with it, go for it, man.
Do you think he knows this about himself?
He's got to now. Like, if maybe he doesn't watch the Manning cast, maybe he's not on social media, but he's watching Monday Night Football, right? Like, he's got to know. I don't know. Someone's shared this with him. He's got to know that people are thinking this about him.
Like some people, it's just a quirk they have. They can't remember names.
Yeah.
Urban can't remember faces.
Yeah.
Like
that seems to be the case.
That's fine, but it's hilarious. And it makes me feel better about my own lack of recognition by a coach as a walk-on.
I do, if you're okay with this, I do like when every once in a while you're talking to Weddle and he slips in a Murph.
I don't mind. I don't mind being called Murph by guys who I played with.
Okay.
Right?
But I the last time that happened was the first time I recognized it, and I went, and you saw me kind of look at you like,
yes.
Did he just do that?
Yes.
and you gave me a knowing nod like, yes.
Those guys, look, anyone who is on any of my teams after Utah can call me Murph whenever they want. That doesn't bother me at all. That's just like, it is what it is. It ended up being a funny story. It's a terrible nickname, but it's fine, right?
You like it when your friends kind of tease you with it. You're okay with that.
Yeah, I can laugh at myself enough. Yeah. If I get aggravated about it, and I shouldn't reveal this on air because people are going to do it to me on purpose, but when like random people who I don't even know call me Murphy, I'm like, dude, you can't call me that.
Like, get the bleep out of here.
You don't get to call me Murphy. Like, you were not part of that. Okay, you are not allowed to use that nickname. But it is what it is. Anyway, great story.
I'm glad
from
you
the
got
Manning
validation
cast.
from the Manning cast last night, OC.
Oh,
I know that time is not necessarily a time you look back with a ton of fondness personally for yourself. But,
yeah,
you like that you were part of a great team, but.
Yeah, it was embarrassing for me how bad I ended up being. But yes.
But I'm glad you got some validation from it.
Thank you to the Manning cast. They're really doing God's work out there by giving us the true stories behind Urban Meyer's lack of recognition and such. Not knowing Mike Vrabel, unforgivable. All right. We got to wrap up the show. James, you actually are going to do trivia, I think, by yourself. I got to go to the airport.
Yeah. Get out of here, man.
Everyone have a happy Thanksgiving. Tune in on Friday, Black Friday, for the PFL fights on ESPN. I love that I get to do this job, and I love that I get to do that job, and I love that we have so much in this country, in this workplace, in this beautiful state of ours to be thankful for. I know it's premature. You're supposed to do that on Thanksgiving, but I'm not going to be here. Thank you to everyone who listens to this show, and I appreciate all of you. Happy Thanksgiving. We'll talk with you next Monday. I will talk with you next Monday. And then, of course, Zachariah is going to be filling in on Wednesday.
Yeah, we'll have Paul Pugmire helping out a little bit, too. Paul will be live at Tim Dolly.
Oh, nice.
Tomorrow. And Zachariah will be hosting. He'll be the main host of this show remotely, but we'll have Paul Pugmire down at Tim Dolly telling us what kind of Black Friday deals they have going on at Tim Dolly.
Yes or no, does Zachariah do the tried and true, low-hanging fruit, sports talk radio, perfect Thanksgiving plate thing?
Oh, he absolutely does.
I think you're right. That's all for me on the Sean O'Connell Show. ESPN 700, 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN Radio Network.
winding down a Tuesday Sean O'Connell show. Mostly taking us home on Thanksgiving week. I'm James Peterson, holding down for this last segment. It's on his way to the Middle East to call NFL fights for ESPN. It's not trivia. You heard the Manning cast last segment. Urban Meyer didn't recognize Owen Wilson when he coached him in a charity flag football game, a decade ago or so. And Mike Vrabel shared that Urban didn't recognize him either when they were coaching against each other in the NFL a couple years ago. Vrabel was also on Urban's staff at Ohio State. Just bananas. Based on that, OC said that Urban Meyer should be tested for a specific condition. What is the name of that condition? I need the proper name of the condition, and OC did say it. First person to text that correct answer into the Ditch Bros text line, 877-353-0700, will win 2 Jersey Mike's free sub cards and a $25 Farmer and Chemist gift card and 2 tickets to see Post Malone. There you go. That's why we brought him in. Had him bring us in the segment here. He'll be at Rice Eccles Stadium next April. That'll do it for the Sean O'Connell Show today. Join us tomorrow at Tim Dolly Nissan in Murray. That's 4528 South State. Paul Pugmire will be live on site letting you know about the Black Friday deals they have going on. He'll have a ton of prizes and swag for people who show up and say hi to him as well. That's tomorrow from 11 to 2. OC, again, on a flight to Saudi Arabia to call PFL fights for ESPN on Friday. So Zachariah will take the mic tomorrow. Thank you to Gordy Chiesa, Mekhi Bernard, and Jeff Schwartz, and taking the time to join the show today. If you missed anything, ESPN700sports.com, the ESPN 700 app, and search The Sean O'Connell Show wherever you get your podcasts. The Drive is next with Porter Larson and Tony Parks sitting in for Spence here on Utah's #1 sports talk, ESPN 700 and 92.1 FM, part of the Utah ESPN radio network.